Chapter 13:22. Everyone was shocked by this one sword. Even Yuan Fatian and the young golden-winged rock king couldn't help but gasp. They also felt a great threat from this sword. They were thinking about how they would deal with this blow if they were in Lin Sun's position. As for the other experts in the surroundings, they'd already lost their composure and were dumbstruck. Since the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun had injured Yu Shi, Yao Li, the descendant of the White Tiger, and Bai Gan. On the other side, the broken sword hung in the sky like the sun. Even Wan Yin, who had great attainments in swordsmanship, had no time to pay attention to anything else. She could only barely hold on. At this time, the siege against Lin Sun was completely broken by this sword that could amaze the world. The power of the devil god was vividly demonstrated at this moment. Clatter, scarlet blood splashed and dyed the void red. The bodies of Yan Shan and Yan Hai were broken, but the strange thing was that their flesh and blood were wriggling and healing as if they were alive. This was how terrifying the path of attaining sainthood through the body was. Even if one's body was shattered, one could still recover. So, there was only a single method to kill one in one go. Destroy their flesh and blood. The primordial spirit and thoughts of a body practitioner were nurtured in the flesh and blood. The flesh and blood was the root of their way to conquer the world. For example, a body practitioner who had stepped into the saint realm could recover with only a drop of blood. Why? Because this drop of blood was like a divine treasure, containing primordial spirit, power, and cultivation. It was really terrifying. "They are recovering," someone said in a trembling voice. Only Lin Sun looked calm. He didn't even bother to look at them again. "Big brother, you're amazing. The power of this sword has invaded the flesh and blood of Yan Shan and Yan Hai, producing a destructive power. This is equivalent to destroying most of their cultivation," Alu exclaimed. As a body practitioner, he knew better than others that Lin Sun's sword not only destroyed the bodies of Yan Shan and Yan Hai, but also destroyed the foundation of the Great Way. This was the most horrible thing. Sure enough, when Yan Shan and Yan Hai recovered, their breath was extremely weak, and their faces were ashen, full of unwillingness and despair. Becoming a king at the peak, stepping into immortality, in the future, there was originally an extremely bright future. But under this sword, all hope, future, and ambitions were on the verge of being destroyed. Even if he were to completely recover, who knew how long it would take? "Will all of you be able to block this sword?" Lin Sun's indifferent voice resounded through the world as he looked at Bai Gan, Yu Shi, Yao Li, and the others in the distance. Their bodies stiffened as if they'd fallen into an icy pit. If they didn't understand the gap between them and Lin Sun at this point, they would be really stupid. This is called asking for humiliation. His death is not to be regretted. The cold voice was like a horn that hastened death. "Run!" Suddenly, a sweet voice screamed in the distance. Before, her figure was hazy like the misty rain, and her temperament was like the high and mighty moon. She talked and behaved calmly and respectfully, as if she was sure to defeat Lin Sun. But now, her expression changed, and her eyes almost split apart from rage. She'd completely lost control of her emotions, and she was unable to maintain her composure. Lin Sun's strength had completely chilled her. Now, only regret, unwillingness, self-blame, and other emotions were fermenting in her heart. Unfortunately, it was too late for her to regret. When she reminded him, it was already too late. Boom! As soon as Lin Sun's voice fell, a fist force like a shining dragon broke through the air, seemingly locking the 8 directions and enveloping all directions. The feeling this punch gave Bai Gan, Yao Li, and Yu Shi was that there was no way to escape and no way to avoid it. The endless horror was like a cold current, making their minds on the verge of collapse, and the strong unwillingness stimulated their faces to distort. But as a peerless figure, who would be willing to be killed like this? But at this time, they were desperate. No, in the distance, Wan Yin was so angry that she coughed up blood. Regret and hatred cut her heart like a knife. At this critical moment a sigh suddenly resounded. "Brother Lin, please show mercy." The voice, like the morning bell and evening drum, went straight to people's hearts, with an invisible great majesty. As soon as the voice sounded, a figure appeared out of thin air and blocked Lin Sun's punch. However, to everyone's surprise, he didn't resist but bore the blow with his body. Bang! The figure staggered back a few steps, swayed for a while, and a wisp of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. For a moment, all the people present were stunned and silent. Looking carefully, they found that the figure was dignified, with wide sleeves and a wide belt, handsome eyes, and slender eyebrows. He was indescribably elegant and handsome. Even though he was knocked back by a punch at this moment, when he stabilized his figure, he didn't look embarrassed at all. He still gave people a calm and dignified temperament. "Your Highness!" Exclamations sounded. Bygone, Yushi, Yaoli, and others who had long been desperate, regretful, and unwilling were stunned, and their eyes turned red. At this critical moment of life and death, how could they expect that the Crown Prince would come in person and block a blow for them with his own body? Looking at the blood dripping from the corner of the Crown Prince's mouth, they didn't understand. With the Crown Prince's combat strength, it was no problem for him to resolve this blow, but why didn't he fight back? This scene also shocked others in the field. The person who came was naturally Xiaohao, the young master of the Star Nether Imperial family, who ranked first on the Tianjiao Golden List and was almost invincible in the upper 9 realms. But such a figure, who was as dazzling as the sun, didn't resist or resolve Lin Sun's blow. Why was this? The people in the field were shocked and confused. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be slightly stunned, and then he understood and couldn't help frowning. "Brother Lin, can you give me some face and stop now?" Xiaohao smiled bitterly and saluted with folded hands. Many people gasped. With Xiaohao's current status and combat strength, he didn't have to lower his head like this, but he did it. This was unexpected. "Your Highness, you," Bygone and others were also dumbfounded, with unspeakable anger in their hearts. The Crown Prince was like a legend in their hearts, but now in order to help them, he lowered his head and begged Lin Sun for mercy. How could they accept this? There's no need to say more. If you've done something wrong, you should take it as an apology. If you had known it would be like this, would you have come to pick a fight behind my back? Xiaohao frowned and glanced at Bygone and others with a look of exasperation. This made Bygone and others feel ashamed and lowered their heads. Seeing all this, Lin Sun sighed softly in his heart and put away the broken sword with a thought. "Thank you, Brother Lin." Xiaohao smiled slightly, as if relieved from a heavy burden. From the beginning to the present, he had been apologetic, humble, and bowed his head. He didn't have the sharpness of an overlord on the Tianjiao Golden List at all. People couldn't help but wonder whether Xiaohao was worthy of his name. But in the eyes of Old Toad, Alu, Yuan Fatian, and the young golden-winged rock in the distance, there was a serious and dignified expression. This was the real freedom of advance and retreat. If he advanced, he would be famous all over the world, top the Tianjiao Golden List, and overlook the heroes in the world. If he retreated, he would be as humble as jade, treat people with dignity, and not be bound by the eyes of the world. Such broad-mindedness and boldness were absolutely rare in the world. "Young master, this is all because of me. Bygone and others are all following orders. Don't blame them. I'm willing to bear the blame and die without regret." In the distance, Wanyin rushed over with a pale face and bowed her head to salute. Xiaohao sighed softly with a touch of regret in his eyes. He said, "Wanyin, you can leave now." Then, he took a deep breath and looked at Lin Sun, saying, "Brother Lin, what happened today was caused by the people around me after all. I'm willing to bear the blame. If you have any dissatisfaction in your heart, you can tell me. I promise to do my best to make it up to you. I only hope to resolve this grievance so that we won't become enemies." His attitude of bowing his head and admitting his mistake moved all the people present. Who could imagine that Xiaohao, the dignified prince, would apologize to Lin Sun so frankly and seriously without showing any perfunctory or dissatisfaction? If this was spread out, how would the world view this matter? However, everyone knew that Xiaohao did this not because of fear or awe of Lin Sun. Lin Sun naturally knew this. He couldn't help but think of the scene when he met Xiaohao for the first time. At that time, he realized that Xiaohao was an extremely extraordinary figure with great courage, perseverance and ambition. He had the temperament of a leader. If Xiaohao had forced Lin Sun as soon as he appeared, Lin Sun wouldn't have stopped. After Xiaohao appeared, he first blocked Lin Sun's punch with his own body without resolving the resistance, and then sincerely apologized, which made Lin Sun feel it was inappropriate to pursue the matter. After all, there was no hatred between him and Xiaohao. It was not worthwhile to fall out with some unimportant people at this moment. Apart from other things, this time I seriously injured your subordinates, and some of them even lost their cultivation. Aren't you going to fight for them? Lin Sun said casually. Xiaohao smiled bitterly, and then he sighed. This is called asking for it, and no one can be blamed for it. If they hadn't made a mistake this time, I would have come to visit you later to reminisce about the past and discuss the Tao with you. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? As he said, he cupped his hands and said, Brother Lin, before we met in Starfall Peak, I knew that you and I would meet sooner or later. But today's scene is not what I want to see. No matter what you feel in your heart, my friends made mistakes first, so I won't complain about it. Similarly, I only hope that today's matter won't make Lin Sun take it to heart and make our relationship sour. Hearing this, many people sighed with admiration in their hearts. Xiaohao's sincerity could be seen here. Seeing this, Lin Sun also smiled and cupped his hands, saying, Ignorance is not a crime. Brother Xiaohao is magnanimous, and I am not a person who haggles over every little thing. Let's forget about these trivial things. After a pause, he continued, There is no time like the present. Now that you and I meet here, please let me do my duty as a host and have a drink with you. What do you think? Xiaohao was stunned, and then he laughed heartily. That's a good idea. I can't wait to have a drink with you. Please. Lin Sun smiled slightly. P.S. Thank you for the tips and monthly votes of W83,127 and other brothers and sisters. I will try my best to update more tonight. If there are monthly votes, please encourage me. Chapter 13:23. Since the two of you are here, why don't we drink together? Lin Sun turned his head and looked at Yuan Fatian and the young rock in the distance. The young rock was startled and hesitated. Go, why not? I'm not afraid of Lin Sun playing tricks. Yuan Fatian snorted. All right, whether it's Lin Sun or Xiaohao, they are both people I want to see. The young rock nodded. A dispute came to an end just like that. The people watching from afar realized that after this battle, the name of demon god Lin was destined to shake the upper 9 realms. As for Xiaohao's act of asking for punishment, it would surely become a story that people would take delight in talking about. The Flying Star Mountain was full of guests. Lin Sun, Alu, Old Toad, the Big Blackbird, Xiaohao, Yuan Fatian, and the young rock were all sitting on the ground, drinking and chatting in a harmonious atmosphere. Only Wanyin, Baigon, Yaoli, and Yushi were silent, lowering their heads to drink. This gathering was based on their crushing defeat, but now they were sitting at the same table as their opponent, Lin Sun, so they naturally felt awkward and depressed. In a few months the battle for the ultimate domain will come to an end, but the battle of the Great Era is not over yet. Xiaohao put down his wine cup and sighed. In these years, I don't know how many changes have happened in the ancient wasteland. When we return, I don't know who will lead the world. For a moment, everyone felt emotional. Calculating the time, they had all been in the ultimate domain for more than 8 years. Before coming, they were only cultivators of the 5 realms, But now, looking around, they were all peak kings who had set foot in the longevity realm. This was change. If they hadn't entered the ultimate domain, it was destined that they wouldn't have such an astonishing transformation on their path of cultivation in just a few years. The Great Era is unprecedented and extremely brilliant, but in the world, when it reaches its peak, it will decline. No one can guarantee what the world will be like when this Great Era comes to an end, the young rock said indifferently. Cultivators like us can't control the changes of the world. The only thing we can do is to go against the odds and seek a higher breakthrough. Not bad. Xiaohao deeply agreed, and then he pondered for a moment before he suddenly said, however, if I'm not wrong, then we have no choice but to face a serious problem when we leave the peak region. What do you mean? Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. War of the Nine Zones. Xiaohao lightly spat out 4 words. For a moment, many people's expressions changed slightly as they vaguely understood. In the ancient times, there were enemies from the 8 regions who came to invade the ancient Desolation region and annihilated its orthodoxies. This was known as the Nine Realms competition. In the past, more than one grand war had erupted because of this. Saints were like weeds before such calamity, and all living beings could only go with the flow. For example, the ancient Desolation region was originally a complete world. However, due to the great calamity caused by the invasion of the 8 regions, it was directly shattered and transformed into the Eastern Victory, Western Horizontal, Profound South, and Big Dipper realms. The border rivers that spread throughout the 4 great realms were the scars left behind by the war in the ancient Desolation region. Presently, the ancient Desolation region is experiencing a great era that has never been seen before, and it's unparalleled in the world. It's absolutely impossible for the experts of the other 8 regions to watch as the ancient Desolation region rises. Xiaohao's gaze was deep and serene. This is a blood enmity between the large regions, and it has been formed since the ancient times. If it wasn't for the sages of the past spilling blood at the beginning and resisting with all their might to defeat the enemies of the other 8 regions, the ancient Desolation region would have probably been reduced to a prisoner and ruled by the other 8 regions. For a time, everyone felt extremely depressed in their hearts. They more or less knew a little about this matter. Even though they hadn't personally experienced it, they only had to think about it to know that if a similar war really occurred, then the ancient Desolation region was bound to fall into an extremely great upheaval. The corpses of our enemies are buried beneath the border rivers, and the heroic souls of countless sages of our ancient Desolation region are also buried there. Since the ancient times until now, countless extraordinary overlords and peerless heroes have fallen in the world for the sake of resisting the enemies of the outside world. Now, a similar incident might occur again. To the ancient Desolation region and all living beings in the world, it's bound to be a calamity accompanied by blood. How can there be an unbroken egg when the nest is overturned? Everyone, I'm absolutely not saying all this today to worry about nothing. I just want to remind all of you that the competition for the ultimate regions is a matter between all of us in the end, whereas when it's related to the calamity of the competition between the 9 regions, no one is able to remain uninvolved. When Xiaohao said this, his voice couldn't help but carry a hint of sonorous killing intent. My only hope is that when that day comes, I will kill my way to the 9th heaven and kill all the enemies of the outside world. A terrifying aura spread out from Xiaohao's imposing figure, causing the wind and clouds to change color, and everyone was shocked. At this moment, Xiaohao showed the demeanor of the number 1 on the Tianjiao Golden List, which made Lin Sun's heart involuntarily tremble. I've made a fool of myself in front of everyone. Xiaohao seemed to realize that he had lost his composure. He immediately restrained his aura and said, "To be honest, in the ancient times, the experts of my Dark Star Imperial clan were destroyed by the enemies of the 8 regions. There's also Bygone, Yuxi, Yenshan, and Yanhai. Their respective clans suffered near annihilation in the war against the enemies of the outside world. They're the same as me. Sooner or later, we'll get our revenge and settle this grudge. As soon as these words were spoken, Bygone and the others revealed sorrowful expressions, and their hearts surged. On the other hand, Lin Sun and the others finally understood why Bygone and the others gathered by Xiaohao's side. It was because they had a common goal and a common enemy. If that day really comes, what will Brother Lin plan to do? Xiaohao suddenly asked while looking at Lin Sun. I naturally won't sit still and wait for death. Lin Sun said casually. He would do as much as he had the ability. At present, he didn't have the ability to care for the world and save the common people, so he naturally wouldn't talk about it. Speaking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but think of a question. Why is it that there are always 8 regions invading, but the experts of the ancient wasteland never take the initiative to attack? A wisp of helplessness appeared on the corners of Xiaohao's mouth as he said, the reason is very simple. Among the 9 regions, the ancient wasteland is the most barren and declining. It seems to have countless orthodoxies, but in fact, its foundation is far inferior to the other 8 regions. This was the reality. The weak would be beaten. Since ancient times, how could countless sages and magnates not think of taking the initiative to attack the other 8 regions to avenge their humiliation? The reason why they had never succeeded was that it was too difficult. It is said that in the other 8 regions, if one wants to reach the peak on the road of cultivation, there is no restriction of the power of heaven and earth. It is a normal thing in cultivation. But for our ancient wasteland, it can only be achieved in the present world. Little Rock King also sighed. This sentence moved Lin Sun and the others, and they almost couldn't believe it. They knew better than anyone how difficult it was to reach the peak, but now it was said that in the other 8 regions it was a very normal thing to reach the peak. Who wouldn't be surprised? The ancient wasteland is called the Abandoned Dao region for a reason. Xiaohao opened his mouth and told a story. It is said that in the beginning of the ancient times, the ancient wasteland was the most powerful among the 9 regions. But later, because of a battle of the great Tao that affected the 9 regions, the ancient wasteland lost a part of the origin of chaos. From then on, the order of heaven and earth was incomplete, and the ancient wasteland's heaven and earth gradually weakened. Hearing this, Lin Sun also remembered that the mysterious woman in the gate to heaven had also said that in the beginning, the ancient wasteland was unparalleled and brilliant. It was the top of the 9 regions, overlooking the heavens, and had an extremely glorious time. However, as for how the ancient wasteland declined, it was like a taboo mystery, and no one knew until now. Everyone, in these years, you must have obtained a lot of fortunes and inheritances. But have you noticed that those fortunes and inheritances were left behind by some extremely dazzling figures in the ancient times? As soon as Xiaohao's words came out, everyone immediately agreed. Lin Sun had long noticed that from immortal Burning Chen Lin Kong to War Emperor Wuyang in the Nether River Forbidden Land, and Holy Buddha Xingjia in the Buddha Buddhist land, they could all be said to be giants of a generation, overlords. These sages joined forces to create this supreme region. After leaving behind their inheritances, they all went to the same place. That is the ancient path of the starry sky. Xiaohao revealed a shocking secret, because in the opinion of these sages, whether it is to reach the peak of the great Tao or to change the situation of the ancient wasteland among the 9 regions, only the ancient path of the starry sky could solve the problem. For a moment, everyone was shocked. This was the first time they had heard of this secret. Of course, this is still a little far from us. Even if the battle of the 9 regions breaks out, it will at least be many years later. What we need to do is to forge ahead and seek a higher realm on the path of the great Tao. Xiaohao said, only in this way can we have the ability to resist and resolve the catastrophe when it comes. Lin Sun asked, then in Brother Xiaohao's opinion, when will the battle of the 9 regions break out? At most, it will not be more than 100 years. Xiaohao pondered, it will even break out in advance. In fact, it is very simple to judge when this will happen. When the 9 regions battlefield reopens, it will be a sign. Lin Sun suddenly remembered that when he participated in the list of small tycoons in the Immortal Mountain, the spiritual servant, guarding the Immortal Mountain, had said that there was a passage leading to the 9-region battlefield on the Immortal Mountain. For a moment, Lin Sun's thoughts were flying. The Battle of the 9 Regions. This problem must be carefully paid attention to in the future. As the saying goes, no egg can remain intact when the nest is overturned. Who dares to ignore it? Brother Lin, thank you for your hospitality. After the banquet, Xiaohao got up and left with Huanin, Baigan, and the others. Lin Sun watched them leave and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Xiaohao was really different from other top figures. What this person was seeking was no longer a temporary battle, but the battle of the 9 regions that was destined to happen in the future. Soon, Lin Sun gathered his thoughts and turned back. He still had one more thing to do. P.S. This chapter is the foreshadowing of a big plot. Although it is a little boring, it is very important. Chapter 1324. Young Lord, are we really going to let it go? Huanin couldn't help asking after they left Flying Star Mountain. In this battle, Yan Shan and Yan Hai's cultivation was almost destroyed, and the others were all seriously injured. It could be said that they were defeated in a mess. The others also looked at Xiaohao. In their view, Xiaohao didn't have to lower his head and apologize to Lin Sun with his background and combat power. Xiaohao was silent for a moment and said, Huanin, you have been with me for a long time. I don't blame you for acting on my behalf today, but I don't want it to happen again. In an instant, Huanin's pretty face turned pale. She had never seen the Crown Prince so angry. Your Highness, Miss Huanin also wants to help you take back the spirit-eating insects. Baigan said. Spirit-eating insects? Xiaohao laughed at himself. The Serene Star Imperial clan has long been destroyed. Why do we need the guardian insects? What's more, it's Lin Sun's good fortune to get the spirit-eating insects. Why should I rob him? After a pause, he sighed softly. I know you are unwilling and think that I should not apologize to Lin Sun, but you will understand in the future, at least, when the Battle of the 9 Regions comes, you will find that Lin Sun is the most worthy one among the people who can help us achieve great things. Huanin and others were all stunned. How could demon god Lin be valued so much by the Crown Prince? Master, there is one thing I want to tell you. On Lin Sun's way back to Flying Star Mountain, Little Silver, who had been meditating in the Sea of Consciousness, suddenly spoke. What's wrong? Xiaohao tried to talk to me with the Serene Star Insect Mastery, said Little Silver. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. He didn't notice it at all before. Little Silver said, but I refused. I don't know what his intention is, good or bad. Please be careful, Master. Lin Sun nodded. Wasn't Xiaohao worried that Lin Sun would find out about his little trick? Master, although the ancestors of the spirit-eating insects have been serving the Serene Star Imperial clan, I am different. Little Silver said, no matter who it is, if they want me to betray them, I would rather die than agree. Lin Sun felt relieved and said, let's not talk about this. Xiaohao may have his own plans, but it's absolutely impossible for me to hand you over. Little Silver looked relieved. Then I'm relieved. Lin Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Only then did he realize that the little guy had been worried that he would sell it. Brother Lin, the two of us will take our leave as well. When Lin Sun returned to the table, the little golden-winged rock also stood up and said, didn't the two of you come to the Flying Star Mountain to spar with me? Lin Sun was stunned. Do you think we're idiots? Yuan Faishan's tone was stiff. If I were to fight you, wouldn't I be tortured badly? I'm not a masochist, why would I fight? In fact, he was very unwilling and brooded over what had happened in the past. But the situation was stronger than him, so he had to give up the plan to make trouble for Lin Sun. The senior beside you already knows about what happened back then. I didn't take the 9 clear holy body technique by force. It was given to me by that senior. Lin Sun explained. Yuan Feishan's face was cloudy for a while. Finally, he said helplessly, "Of course I know. Otherwise, do you think I would talk to you so nicely?" Lin Sun said with a smile, "So, you shouldn't hate me." Yuan Fatian snorted coldly, "Even if I hate you, there's nothing I can do. Who told me to know that I'm no match for you? But then again, I'm afraid that you still can't figure out the cultivation method of the 9 clear holy body technique, right?" Speaking of this, he couldn't help feeling a little proud. Lin Sun said frankly, "Yes, I happened to meet you this time. I wonder if you could give me some advice?" Yuan Fatian was dumbfounded and a little confused. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun would have such an idea. Just as he was about to say something, Lin Sun put his arm around his shoulder and said, "Come on, we've drunk wine and the misunderstanding has been resolved. Isn't it nice to take this opportunity to sit down and talk about Tao?" But Yuan Fatian still wanted to struggle, but Alu and Old Toad came up to him with a smile and invited him warmly. "Hey, Brother Yuan, don't be so polite. Do you look down on us?" The ancestor of Yu Lang's line was a great saint with the title of Hun Tian. Rumor has it that he even stepped into the emperor realm later on, and his name shook the heavens. All of us admire him extremely. Why don't Brother Yuan tell us about these secrets? Under the enthusiastic hospitality of Lin Sun and others, Yuan Fatian was in a state of confusion and dizziness. He knew that it was like boarding a pirate ship, but he couldn't refuse. The little golden-winged rock king couldn't help but gasp when he saw this scene. These guys were so shameless in order to get the cultivation method of the 9 clear holy body technique. The pitiful Yuan Fatian was such an arrogant and ruthless person, yet he was at a loss for what to do and was powerless to defend himself. Finally, a few hours later, Yuan Fatian and the little golden-winged rock king left Flying Star Mountain together as if they were running for their lives. "Did you really pass on the secret method of our clan?" On the way, the little golden-winged rock king was speechless. The 9 clear holy body technique was a peerless inheritance that shocked the ancient domain in ancient times. As far as the little golden-winged rock king knew, this method was obtained by the ancestor of Yu Yang in the ultimate ruins. Its origin was far more mysterious than the rumors in the world. "You're wrong. Lin Sun has already obtained the complete inheritance. I just told him how to practice this method." At this time, Yuan Fatian had calmed down without any frustration or regret. Instead, he was a little complacent. "You're still very happy?" The little golden-winged rock king was stunned. He felt that Yuan Feishan's head had been kicked by a donkey. How could he still be happy? "Little rock king, haven't you heard of the forbidden Tao test?" Yuan Fatian said leisurely. "Since ancient times, no one has ever been able to cultivate qi, body and soul at the same time. Otherwise, he will definitely suffer before becoming a sage. If Lin Sun dares to try, he will only draw fire to himself and destroy his own cultivation." The little golden-winged rock king suddenly understood. He couldn't help but look at Yuan Fatian and said, "I didn't expect you to be so scheming." Yuan Fatian shook his head. "How dare I scheme against such a ruthless person? He must also know the disadvantages of doing this. It depends on whether he really dares to try it." "I doubt it. Since Lin Sun did this, he must have made some preparations. Don't forget that this is the absolute domain, not the ancient desolation domain. Besides, this is an unprecedented great world. Everything is possible." The little golden-winged rock king muttered, "If Lin Sun can cultivate 3 paths at the same time and step on the top of all of them, and luckily cross the forbidden Tao test, how terrifying will he be when he becomes a sage?" Yuan Fatian was stunned, and then he was horrified while his expression flickered indeterminately. "That's difficult to say. But in my opinion, his chances are extremely tiny, and it's practically non-existent. After all, such an example has never occurred in the past." The little golden-winged rock king also nodded. "However, Neither of them knew that the divine Elephant War Emperor had seen such an example in the starry sky ancient path a long time ago. Elder brother, Yuan Fatian obviously knows that you dare not cultivate 3 paths at the same time, so he told you the way of cultivation so readily. On the Flying Star Mountain, Old Toad said, which won the approval of the big black bird and Alu. Isn't it better? Lin Sun said with a smile. If he didn't think so, I'm afraid he wouldn't have told me these secrets of cultivation. When Old Toad and the others thought about it, they couldn't help laughing. Perhaps this was what they called an unsuspecting coincidence. Elder brother, are you really going to practice body refining? Old Toad and others were a little worried. Don't worry, I have my own plan. Lin Sun's eyes were deep. That night, Lin Sun, who was cultivating in silence, entered the heaven-accessing place again after many years. In those days, he was a weak spiritual apprentice. After going through the tests of the heaven-accessing place, he had the power to transform and rise. Now, when he entered the door again, he had already set foot on the path of immortality. Compared with that year, there was a world of difference. However, for the existence of the heaven-accessing place, Lin Sun was more shocked than grateful. Because, as his cultivation became more profound and he saw more of the world and the ups and downs of the world, he more and more understood how amazing the heaven-accessing place was. Not to mention other things, just the mysterious woman who lived in the heaven-accessing place was enough for Lin Sun to look up to now. The familiar space and the familiar Green Cloud Avenue appeared in front of Lin Sun again. Stepping on the Green Cloud Avenue, Lin Sun walked all the way, recalling the bits and pieces of the past. When he entered for the first time, he passed the test of flowing light spiritual tattoo and mastered meditating magic. When he entered for the second time, he passed the test of mill waterfalls in the spiritual tattoo battlefield and obtained the inheritance of nature insight and spirit devour scripture and the first half of 6 cuts of sky yuan. When he entered for the third time, he passed the test of the secret realm of 100 battles and obtained the fragment of the ancient seal of shaking heaven, one of the 9 treasures of the great wilderness, from which he comprehended the 9 strikes of shaking heaven. For the fourth time, Lin Sun was moved to the ancient spirit world. It was also there that Lin Sun obtained the broken blade, the spirit-eating insect, the Luoho secret treasure, and the spirit-refining gourd containing a drop of purple blood. When he entered for the 5th time, he obtained the Tao-cutting formula. When he entered for the 6th time, he obtained the complete 6 cuts of sky yuan. Now, all the tests on the Green Cloud Avenue had been passed. Lin Sun walked forward. In his vision, the gate leading to the sky at the end of the Green Cloud Avenue gradually became clear. This gate was towering and full of ancient and heavy atmosphere. Looking from a distance, it was like a gate supporting the sky, making people look particularly small. Standing in front of it was like an ant looking up at a high mountain. I haven't seen you for a few years. You have stepped into the 6th retribution of longevity realm. It seems that you didn't waste your time in the domain of death. Suddenly, an indistinct and chilly voice resounded. Lin Sun suddenly raised his eyes and saw the familiar figure sitting cross-legged in the shadow of the gate leading to the sky. P.S. The 3rd update is here. Chapter 1325. The state at the end of the previous chapter was wrong. It should be the 7 tribulations of longevity. It has been corrected. Nice to meet you, Senior. Lin Sun bowed. The slender figure was like an illusion, exuding a mysterious and boundless aura. It was the peerless woman who had shocked the ancient desolation realm with the method of turning the sage into a livestock. The 7 tribulations of longevity is not bad. But you came at a bad time this time. This gate can't be opened in the absolute domain. The woman's voice was faint. She sat cross-legged under the gate to heaven. She seemed to be very small, but her existence could not be ignored. Lin Sun was stunned and then said, I'm not here to seek opportunities, but to ask you about something. What is it? It's about the Tao tribulation. When hearing this, the woman immediately understood. She couldn't help but look at Lin Sun and said, "It seems that you are going to seek the way of body refining." Lin Sun nodded. It was related to his own way of cultivation. In the face of the taboo tribulation of prohibition of Tao, he had to be cautious. "I can't give you any advice, but I can tell you the origin of the Tao tribulation of prohibition." The woman was silent for a moment and said, "At the beginning of ancient times, there was a cultivation method of the absolute domain in the 9 regions. That era was called the primitive era. In the primitive era, only in the ancient desolation realm, there was a strange catastrophe. After the catastrophe, the ancient desolation realm lost a part of the origin of chaos, so the order of heaven and earth was incomplete. The number of great ways was missing, and the absolute domain never appeared again. This is the fundamental reason why there has never been an absolute domain in the endless years from ancient times to the present. Since the primitive era, there have been 3 kinds of taboo tribulations in the ancient desolation realm. The first one is the Tao-cutting tribulation for the sage realm. From then on, the sage realm could no longer be achieved if he wanted to break through and step into the emperor realm. The second one is the prohibition of confinement for all the creatures in the ancient desolation realm. From then on, the ancient desolation realm was like a cage, trapping all the strong to explore the way to the outside world. The third is the severing tribulation that targets the Tao paths of body refinement, soul refinement, and qi refinement. From that day onward, any expert that intends to cultivate in these 3 paths will be eliminated from the world before they attain the saint realm. Lin Sun was shocked. This was the first time he had heard such a shocking secret. After the primordial era, the source of chaos was missing, and the order of the world was incomplete, to the extent that the absolute peak no longer existed. 3 types of forbidden great tribulations arose simultaneously. Only the ancient desolation realm? Lin Sun frowned and asked. The woman nodded. That's why the ancient desolation region is regarded as a wasteland and an abandoned land by the other 8 regions. With the existence of these 3 forbidden disasters, the ancient desolation region is indeed no different from a wasteland locked in a prison. Lin Sun's mind was in turmoil. Who on earth did the 3 forbidden catastrophes cover the ancient desolation realm like a prison? In the final analysis, the 3 forbidden catastrophes seem to target different targets, but in fact they originate from the same source. I have fought against the power of Tao cutting for a long time, and I have long judged that the power of the 3 forbidden catastrophes will be weakened to the extreme under the background of this great world. The woman's tone was ethereal and indifferent. She gave Lin Sun some advice. If you really want to refine your body, it may be a good opportunity before the great world comes to an end. Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he suddenly understood. After the primordial era, because of the existence of the 3 forbidden catastrophes, there was no more absolute peak in the world, and the ancient desolation realm was like a prison. But in today's great world, there were countless absolute peak figures, which broke the previous rules like the birth of a miracle. If Lin Sun wanted to refine his body and cultivate in 3 paths at the same time, perhaps there would be a similar miracle? This is the only chance. There may not be another one in the future. The woman murmured to herself in a low voice. No one knew what she was thinking of, but there was a kind of indescribable loneliness in her voice. When Lin Sun walked out of the heaven-accessing place, his heart was already firm. Body refining. His path of cultivation was unprecedented and full of tribulations. Now, when the great world came, he didn't want to miss such an unprecedented opportunity. On the edge of the cliff, green pines were rooted, clouds were steaming, and spiritual qi was dense. Lin Sun sat cross-legged with a calm look. In his mind, the holy body tactics of 9 purities was shining, and every word was condensed, emitting obscure and mysterious meaning. There were a total of 1,800 words in this method, and each word contained infinite mystery and secrets. If one didn't know the method, he couldn't understand it even if he tried to understand it. Lin Sun used to be trapped in this way. But as Yuan Fatian said, the method of cultivation, it was like a key that gave Lin Sun a chance to see through the mystery. Buzz, as Lin Sun concentrated on understanding, a strange wave spread. Vaguely, there seemed to be 9 figures of gods emerging. Some picked up the stars and the moon, whistled through the mountains and rivers, and their breath affected all things in the world to tremble. Some leaped above the 9th heaven, drinking dew and attracting the astral evil wind to refine their bodies. Some lay dormant at the bottom of the ocean, motionless, and their chi was as still as a rock. Even the invasion of the ancient times didn't shake them. Some, in Lin Sun's mind, there were grand and sacred voices, as if they were preaching and explaining the essence of cultivation. Then, Lin Sun understood. It was said that the holy body tactics of 9 purities was obtained from the ultimate ruins by great saint of pure heaven, the ancestor of Yu Yang. Its origin was more mysterious than the rumors in the world. This method was divided into 9 realms: Shangqing, Yuqing, Taiqing, Lingqing, Yuanqing, Suqing, Huaqing, Baoqing, and Supreme Qing. Each realm contained great mystery. It was the supreme method to open the divine treasures of the body and refine the qi and blood of the body. When cultivated to the extreme, the figure was surrounded by the holy light of 9 purities, bathed in billions of auspicious light, and the qi and blood of the body were inextinguishable. It wasn't until a long time later that Lin Sun woke up from meditation. He couldn't help marveling in his heart. This method was really terrifying, mysterious, and powerful beyond imagination. For example, Shangqing was the first realm of body refining. When cultivated successfully, the body would be as tough as refined steel, and the qi and blood would be like dragons and elephants, which could tear tigers and leopards apart. Its power was strong enough to crush the practitioners of the same generation in qi refining. The rarest thing was that the method of cultivation and the method of fighting complemented each other in the holy body tactics of 9 purities. For example, after refining Shangqing battle body, one could awaken the secret treasure of qi and blood and master the matching method of body refining, Shangqing 36 battle seals. For example, Yuqing could transform his body into Yuqing battle body and master the 72 breaks of Yuqing. All of these were too wonderful for words. "Brother, have you made up your mind?" In the distance, Alu looked solemn. When it came to body refining, he had the most say. He could even be Lin Sun's teacher. Lin Sun nodded. "Since that's the case, I will naturally teach you everything I know." Alu was not a wishy-washy person and immediately made a decision. When Big Brother reaches the reincarnation development realm in the refinement method, you can use the Wanxiang ancient tablet left behind by the divine Elephant Battle Emperor to cultivate. As long as you can withstand the layers of training and tests, it won't be difficult for you to reach the peak of your physical strength. Okay. Lin Sun agreed readily. Buzz. The surging power of qi and blood, like boiling lava, galloped around Lin Sun like a wild horse out of control. Wisps of white fog-like luster began to appear on his skin, which was dreamy and illusory. In the distance, Old Toad, the big black bird, and Alu were all watching nervously. "How long do you think it will take for Brother to reach the reincarnation developing realm by refining his body from the beginning?" Old Toad asked. Every realm of body refining was different, such as moving qi and blood, washing muscles and bones, tempering 5 internal organs, and honing acupoints, but in the world, whether it was body refining or soul refining, they all followed the qi refining realm. "At least 3 months. The big black bird said seriously. "Wrong, maybe it will only take a month." Alu murmured. Body refining, qi refining, and soul refining complement each other. Brother already has the cultivation of the 7th retribution of longevity realm. His body and qi and blood have already laid a solid foundation. If he refines his body, his cultivation is bound to advance by leaps and bounds. It can't be judged by common sense. The big black bird and old toad nodded. Lin Sun's physical strength had been getting stronger when he practiced before. Not to mention when he was in the 5 realms, just on the road to immortality, every time he went through a tribulation, his physical strength would be transformed and sublimated imperceptibly. It was just that he had never practiced body refining. For example, although Lin Sun hadn't practiced body refining, he already had a strong foundation of body refining like the ocean. As long as he practiced, his realm would be improved like a hot knife through butter. Conversely, for body refining practitioners, if they practiced qi, they could also play a similar role. But because of the existence of Tao test prohibition, the practitioners in the world would at most focus on soul refining, qi refining, or soul refining and body refining. Few people would practice both body refining and qi refining at the same time. The reason was very simple. For the king realm, the soul was like a lamp, which was related to the secret of longevity, and the soul played an immeasurable role in understanding the great Tao and secret method. No matter which strong practitioner, it was impossible to give up the tempering of the soul. But the hope of breaking through the reincarnation development realm in 3 months is very small, isn't it? The big black bird was doubtful. Boom. While they were talking, they saw Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged in the distance, suddenly radiated brilliance. His qi and blood roared and turned into a bright light, drifting in the void. He broke through to the mastery of martial realms so soon? Alu was so shocked that his eyes widened. Old Toad and the big blackbird were also shocked. They had only started cultivating for less than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, but they had actually broken through. This is just the beginning. It's normal to make faster progress, Old Toad said after a while. Both Alu and the big blackbird agreed. With Lin Sun's current cultivation, it was easy for him to make a breakthrough in body refining, so there was no need to make a fuss about it. 3 days later, Lin Sun broke through again, and his body refining reached the gang's spirit realm. This made Alu and others who had been paying attention to Lin Sun speechless and confused. Lin Sun's speed of advancement could not only be described as rapid, but also broke common sense and shocked the world. P.S. Going out for business at night, 2 updates in a row. Chapter 1326. Another 7 days passed. Lin Sun made another breakthrough in body refining and reached Sea Spirit Realm. His body was tempered into pure battle body and mastered pure air-destroying hand. 10 days later, Lin Sun made another breakthrough in body refining and reached Tao Insight Realm. His body was tempered into pure spirit battle body and mastered pure spirit 8 parts tactic. Witnessing Lin Sun's successive breakthroughs, Alu, the big blackbird, and the old toad all looked as if they had seen a ghost. They even began to worry whether Lin Sun's foundation in body refining would be unstable with such a rapid advancement. After all, going too far was as bad as falling short. Once the foundation was unstable, it would be like a castle in the air that could easily collapse. Elder brother, stop. In the end, Alu couldn't help reminding Lin Sun of his worries. Lin Sun was stunned at first and then said, "Why don't we have a duel to prove it?" "Okay." Alu agreed. He took a deep breath and suppressed his cultivation and strength to see spirit realm. Then he rubbed his hands and said, "Elder brother, you have to be careful." He had unparalleled confidence and foundation in body refining. He even secretly warned himself that he must preserve some of his strength so that his elder brother wouldn't lose too badly. If his elder brother became angry out of shame, he would be the one to suffer in the end. Alu beat him. Beat him down. You're the boss. Hey, I'd like to see how badly Lin Sun will be beaten. The old toad and the big black bird were eager to see the world in chaos and gloated. Before long, the battle broke out. Lin Sun also made a move with the strength of Sea Spirit Realm. His body was covered with a layer of illusory halo, as if it was made of jade slurry. The chi and blood in his body were boiling like thunder, rumbling endlessly. Boom! A handprint was condensed, glittering and flowing with the color of glazed jade. It spread out in the void, stirring up the sound of wind and thunder. Pure air-destroying hand. Good timing! Alu shouted loudly as he dashed forward with the might of a dragon, and his vital energy and blood were like smoke as they charged out from his body that was tall like a mountain. The two of them collided, causing the void to tremble. Thud, thud, thud. Under the astonished gazes of Old Toad and Big Black Bird, Alu didn't gain the slightest advantage in this attack. Like Lin, both of them took several steps back. Alu was shocked as well, and then he took a deep breath and said, "Again?" Lin soon smiled faintly, and his eyes were full of fighting intent as he rushed up. Rumble! In an instant it was as if two huge mountains were colliding in the sky. Looking closely, Lin Sun's figure was shining. When his skin expanded, it was as if it was made of bright glazed jade, steaming with terrible chi and blood. On the other hand, Alu's body was like divine iron that was tempered 100 times, and it emitted clanging sounds while he was ferocious like a dragon soaring through the sky. In terms of might, each of them had their own merit. What Old Toad and the Big Black Bird couldn't accept the most was that Alu, a seasoned body refinement expert, hadn't gained the slightest advantage from the start of the battle. "Alu, are you worried that Big Brother will settle the score with you? Hurry up and use your true power." Old Toad was very unhappy and felt that Alu was deliberately holding back. "If you're a man, beat Lin Sun to the ground with the strength you're best at." The Big Black Bird also shouted. Alu's face was gloomy and gloomy. He did hold back at the beginning, worried that he would embarrass Lin Sun too much. But now, he didn't hold back at all and ran the power of Sea Spirit Realm to the extreme. Boom! The more Lin Sun fought, the more delighted he became. The fighting style of a body refinement practitioner was simple, straightforward, and overbearing. No matter how many tricks you used, I could break them with my own strength. As the battle went on, Lin Sun even began to like this feeling. "I give up." Suddenly, Alu jumped out of the battle, exasperated and depressed. It was a great blow to Alu that he couldn't suppress Lin Sun, a beginner in the field of body refinement. "You're not going easy on him on purpose, are you?" Old Toad and the Big Black Bird were suspicious. Alu said grumpily, "You know nothing. Can't you see by now that Big Brother is a 1-in-a-million genius in body refinement?" Old Toad and the Big Black Bird spat in unison. How shameless! In order to please Lin Sun, this barbarian not only held back his strength, but also took the opportunity to flatter Lin Sun. Alu's face darkened and he was completely speechless. He swore to God that every word he said was from the bottom of his heart. After fighting with Lin Sun for real, he concluded that Lin Sun's fast advancement didn't affect the foundation of body refinement. Even in terms of body refinement, Lin Sun's solid foundation was not inferior to Alu when he was in the same realm. What was Lin Sun if not a genius in body refinement? Unfortunately, Old Toad and the Big Black Bird didn't believe him. Alu finally understood that summer insects can't talk about ice. 20 days later, Lin Sun broke through the reincarnation developing realm in body refinement. His body turned into Yuan Qing battle body and mastered the 9 controls of Yuan Qing. At this point, even Old Toad and the Big Black Bird were stunned. In 1 month and 10 days, Lin Sun stepped into the reincarnation developing realm from a newbie in body refinement. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. It was really shocking. Such a speed of advancement made them exclaim that Lin Sun was a monster. "I doubt that my elder brother chose the wrong path from the beginning. With his talent, if he had started body refinement from the beginning, there would definitely be one more horrible monster in body refinement in this world." Alu was stunned. He was also puzzled and shocked. For Lin Sun, the more than 1 month of body refinement cultivation was like a wonderful experience. He could clearly feel that after practicing 9 Purity Holy Body Manual, his physical strength seemed to have found a home and got an unprecedented baptism and sublimation. From the beginning to the end, there was no stagnation or hindrance. It was unimpeded and unparalleled. It felt as if he was born for body refinement. What moved Lin the most was that his spiritual veins were unprecedentedly active in the process of body refining. Wisps of strange waves would spread from his spiritual veins all the time and infiltrate into his blood and qi all over his body. Does the awakening of the power of spiritual veins have something to do with body refinement? Lin Sun had to doubt this. Since his rebirth, spiritual veins had awakened several times, which had helped Lin Sun a lot in his previous cultivation. However, it had never been as lively and nimble as it was during this body refinement. This unexpected discovery made Lin Sun feel more and more fortunate. This time, body refinement was undoubtedly the right choice, which gave him a further understanding of his own talent. Elder brother, you can already use the Wanxiang ancient steel to refine your body. Alu sighed with emotion. In this steel, there are 64 Wanxiang body refining diagrams, which contain the experiences of the divine Elephant War Emperor. He began to instruct Lin Sun. Lin Sun listened carefully and finally realized that the Wanxiang ancient steel was like a Taoist field for cultivation, where there were many trials and tribulations. Only through repeated trials and tribulations could one get the experiences and insights left by the divine Elephant War Emperor. This was absolutely an incomparably rare fortune. At first, the reason why Lin Sun began to consider body refinement was more or less that he was interested in the mystery of the Wanxiang ancient steel. Let's start. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun looked at the Wanxiang ancient steel. At the same time, in the upper 9 realms, a shocking news came out like a hurricane and swept across. Anyone who has been on the Tianjiao Golden List, whether his name is on the list at the moment or not, has the opportunity to enter the ultimate place of inheritance before the end of the absolute domain. The ultimate place of inheritance contains the Saint Guide, which involves the secret of becoming a saint at the peak. Only the first on the road to immortality can get the Saint Guide. As soon as this secret came out, the upper 9 realms were shocked and caused a great uproar. No one knew how many overlords and ruthless people fixed their eyes on the Tianjiao Golden List. Only then did people realize that the existence of the Tianjiao Golden List was not just a simple competition for rankings, but a test. Only those who had left their names on the list were qualified to enter the ultimate place of inheritance and compete for the Saint Guide, the secret of becoming a saint at the peak. Now, it seems that there are only 3 months left before the end of the absolute domain. In this way, the ultimate place of inheritance is likely to appear in a short period of time. Many strong people realized that a real peerless battle was about to begin. For a time, in the upper 9 realms, every Tianjiao battle steel became extremely lively, attracting countless strong people. Some ruthless people who had never been on the Tianjiao Golden List but were extremely powerful also emerged in the following time, causing a lot of uproar and shock. No one expected that there were so many peerless ruthless people in the dark who had never been on the Tianjiao Golden List. Kanshui Realm. In the depths of a black ocean, there was an isolated island. On this day, a peerlessly dazzling strand of sword qi suddenly shot into the sky from the lone island. It slashed through the sky and caused the clouds in all directions to collapse. Everything in the world became dim and lusterless beneath this wisp of sword qi. The seawater within 1,000 miles was boiling. Visible to the naked eye, an invisible ripple-like sword qi spread from the island, oppressing the sea within 1,000 miles, as if bowing its head and rolling. On the isolated island, Yun Qingbai opened his eyes from meditation. At that moment, there seemed to be a pair of unfathomable vortexes reflected in his pupils, and wisps of sword light like electric arcs flowed in them, as if they could see through the illusion and cut and devour people's souls. On the other hand, a shapeless and terrifying sword insight coiled around his body, causing his figure to seem like a peerless sword immortal that possessed a peerless edge. After a few years, I'm afraid that people in the upper 9 realms have forgotten my existence. Yun Qingbai stood up slowly, and the power around him receded like a tide, making his figure look plain, restrained, and otherworldly. Lin Sun, I will kill you this time. Whoosh! The next moment there was no trace of Yun Qingbai on the isolated island. On this day, after a few years, Yun Qingbai left the place of dormancy and returned to the world. Chapter 1327. The Kanshui Realm. Everyone gathered in front of the Kanshui battle stele. They were all waiting to take the test and try to enter the prodigy golden roll. That sword demon Yi Chen from the Yi clan of Crepe Myrtle Mountain. He already has the combat power of the 7th tribulation of the longevity realm. His sword Dao is extremely powerful. I heard that he and demon god Lin are sworn brothers? Yes. TSK. I wonder what rank he can get on the prodigy golden roll this time? People talked in low voices and looked into the distance at the same time. There, Yi Chen, dressed in a purple robe and standing straight like a sword, was taking the test. Recently, as the news of the Ultimate Inheritance Ground broke out, the rankings on the Prodigy Golden Leaderboard were changing at an alarming rate every day. The lower the ranking, the faster the change. Even the names in the top 30 were constantly being attacked. Recently, many new faces had appeared. In the past, Yi Chen had also taken the test and was ranked 22nd. But now, his ranking had fallen sharply, and he barely maintained the 89th place. The drastic change in the rankings indirectly showed how intense the competition on the Heaven's Pride Gold rankings was. It could be said that it was a changing king's flag. Suddenly, the Kanshui battle stele emitted a strange fluctuation. A golden light descended from the sky and enveloped Yi Chen, who was standing in front of the battle stele. 18th. It's too shocking, there was an uproar in the field. Everyone was shocked. All of a sudden, he soared from 89th to 18th. One could imagine how abnormal sword demon Yi Chen's current combat power was. I can't get into the top 10, Yi Chen frowned, feeling a little dissatisfied. But he also knew that there were many peerless experts in the upper 9 realms. The higher the ranking, the more difficult it was to compete. You're Yi Chen? Suddenly, a calm voice sounded. Then, a thin figure walked out of the crowd. He was dressed in white, carried a sword case, and had his hands behind his back. Some of the figures in front of him didn't even have time to react before they staggered back by an invisible and terrifying aura, making way for this person. These figures were about to curse, but when they touched the man in white, their hearts suddenly palpitated, and their bodies stiffened. Yun Qingbai? Yi Chen turned around, and when he saw the appearance of the white-clothed man clearly, his eyes immediately focused. The crowd was in an uproar and everyone's expression changed. After a few years, the peerless sword cultivator who once ranked first on the Heaven's favorite golden list of the upper 9 territories appeared again, and here he was. Yun Qingbai. Just this name alone was like a legend. He had once stood alone and looked down on all his peers, leaving them in the dust. Although his ranking on the Heaven's Prodigy Golden Leaderboard had fallen to 9th place in the years that he had disappeared, he was still a genius. But everyone knew that if Yun Qingbai wanted to, it was not impossible for him to regain the first place. The reason was very simple. Yun Qingbai's strength had long been deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Are you friends with Lin Sun? This was Yun Qingbai's second sentence after he appeared in the field. But it was such a sentence that reminded everyone in the field of the news that caused a sensation in the upper 9 realms a few years ago. It was said that Yun Qingbai and Lin Sun had a blood feud. It was said that Yun Qingbai had been chased by Lin Sun in the Buddha land. It was said that Lin Sun's innate talent had been robbed by Yun Qingbai by despicable and bloody means, which made Yun Qingbai soar on the road of Tao. Some people believed it and some didn't. There were different opinions and a lot of noise. But at least, people could conclude that if Yun Qingbai appeared, the first person he wanted to kill would be Lin Sun. Because a group of descendants of the heaven-reaching sword sect had been killed by Lin Sun. And now all this seemed to be true. Yes. Yi Chen answered without hesitation. As a direct descendant of the Yi clan of Crepe Myrtle Mountain, you should be friends with Lin Sun, a native of the mortal world. If the ancestors of the Yi clan knew it, they would be furious. Yun Qingbai's voice was casual and indifferent. Yi Chen's eyes flashed fiercely and he said, Yun Qingbai, I respect you as a hero of the generation, so I'm polite to you. But it doesn't mean that you can be presumptuous in front of me. Is that so? Then let me see how capable you are, sword demon. Yun Qingbai smiled faintly and raised his hand. Qi. In the void, the sword light was like lightning. A sword qi burst out. It was simple and direct, but it had a domineering momentum that went straight to people's hearts. Even though they were a distance away, people around felt the stinging pain of their skin being cut, and their minds were under an indescribable feeling of suffocation and depression. This sword qi had been condensed to a shocking degree. Humph! Yi Chen's face was serious and focused. He also stabbed out with his sword. The sword intent was overflowing, like a heavenly steed flying in the sky. Bang! The two sword qi collided in the void, and the whole world shook violently. The nearby void was torn into countless cobweb-like cracks. Under the horrified gaze of the crowd, Yun Qingbai's sword qi was obviously a little better. It was invincible and irresistible. Yi Chen's sword qi collapsed inch by inch at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the burst of the light rain, Yi Chen let out a muffled groan and took several steps back. His figure was shaking. In the field, all the heroes changed their faces. Yun Qingbai's sword forced Yi Chen to retreat. Your sword intent has touched the threshold of the divine realm, but it's still lacking. You can't exert the full power of your Yi clan's true self, sword scripture. Yun Qingbai commented casually, compared to me, you're one realm lower. Again. Suddenly Yi Chen took a deep breath. His sleeves fluttered and his long hair fluttered. A monstrous sword intent spread out from his body, forcing the surrounding people to retreat in horror. The sword demon is going to attack with all his strength. Everyone was excited. One was a peerless sword cultivator who had long been at the top of the sword doctrine. The other was a descendant of the Crepe Myrtle Mountain who was known as the Sword Demon. The collision between the two was undoubtedly a battle of the sword doctrine. If you practice for another 10 years, you might be able to block my sword. Yun Qingbai's eyes were indifferent and calm. He just slashed out with his fingers. Buzz. The space between heaven and earth was filled with sword qi. The peerless sword intent seemed to have descended from the void, and it emitted a great momentum that could oppress the universe. It shocked everyone in the field to the point that their souls almost left their bodies. At the same time, Yi Chen stepped on the dragon, and behind him, a vast and brilliant sword intent like a purple sun emerged. Boom! The earth-shattering noise sounded, and the peerless sword qi and cold light made the sun and the moon dim. In a burst of exclamations, Yi Chen's figure retreated and stabilized more than 30 meters away. Everyone fixed their eyes on him and found that there was a bloody sword wound on Yi Chen's left shoulder, which was so deep that the bone could be seen. The second sword strike injured Yi Chen. This area fell into a complete silence. Even some extremely powerful people couldn't help but change their expressions. After a few years, Yun Qingbai had become more and more terrifying. Lin Sun killed a group of descendants of my heaven-reaching sword sect. Do you think if I kill all his relatives and friends, will he feel pain? Yun Qingbai said calmly. His words caused everyone to feel a chill run down their spines. Yun Qingbai is going to give an eye for an eye and start a massacre? Humph! If you have the guts, go and find Lin Sun. Why are you acting fierce in front of me? Yi Chen sneered and was not afraid. I will go and find him, but not now. Yun Qingbai looked indifferent. Don't worry, I won't kill you this time, but it won't be the same next time. After saying that, he turned around and floated away. Yi Chen's face was gloomy, and he couldn't help clenching his fists. On the same day, the news of Yun Qingbai's reappearance shocked the upper 9 regions like a hurricane. All the major forces began to pay close attention to it. Yun Qingbai really appeared. Did he come to kill Lin Sun or for the ultimate place of inheritance? Countless people were speculating. In the next period of time, the news about Yun Qingbai completely detonated the peace of the upper 9 regions and set off a monstrous storm. On the day Yun Qingbai appeared, he defeated Sword Devil Yi Chen in front of the battle tablet of Kanshui. The next day, he crossed thousands of miles and set foot alone in the place where the Sun Moon Hall was located. He seriously injured Xiao Qinghe with one sword strike. On the third day, Yun Qingbai defeated Kanglin Cliff in the Gen Mountain realm and laughed wildly. On the fourth day, Yun Qingbai defeated Yu Jianming in the Thundershocking realm. On the fifth day, every day there would be news about Yun Qingbai. One man and one sword. He defeated one famous character after another. Everyone knew that this was Yun Qingbai's revenge. Because almost all the strong people defeated by him were related to Lin Sun. Why doesn't he kill people? Many people were shocked by Yun Qingbai's series of actions. Not killing people is more threatening to Lin Sun than killing people. Obviously, Yun Qingbai wants to frighten Lin Sun with these battles and make him lose his composure. Someone analyzed. Wrong. Yun Qingbai is a proud and peerless swordsman. Even if he wants revenge, he won't do something like killing innocent people. It can be foreseen that if Demon Lin learns about this, he will not be able to sit still. He will feel guilty and uneasy. After all, it is because of him that his friends are implicated. From now on, as long as Yun Qingbai is still alive, who dares to contact Demon Lin? This is equivalent to completely isolating Demon Lin. In countless discussions and uproars, Yun Qingbai came to the distant Fire Realm on this day. P.S. As usual, 2 updates in a row. Chapter 1328. Kongzhi Mountain. Yun Qingbai was surprised. He frowned slightly as he stared at the beautiful and extraordinary mountain. He could sense that the surroundings of the mountain were encapsulated by a terrifying formation. The means of a Taoist tattoo master, Yun Qingbai had also heard that a few years ago, Lin Sun had easily trapped the doppelganger of Gu Fozi here with this formation. After a while, clang, the sound of a sword resounded through the sky. For the first time, Yun Qingbai opened the sword case on his back and took out a long, dull sword that was 2 feet and 4 inches long and 3 fingers wide. Cut. He gently spat out a word from his lips. After that, this sword that seemed to be dim and inconspicuous seemed to have awoken from its eternal slumber, and it emanated a wisp of extraordinary and peerless sword insight. It went to kill. Boom. Near Kongzhi Mountain, a dense Taoist tattoo formation emerged. This grand formation had helped the Profound Inquisition sword school block countless powerful enemies and resolve countless dangers. But under this sword, the Taoist tattoo formation suddenly let out a harsh and violent wail, as if it could not bear the heavy burden. In the end, the formation burst into pieces. Behind the formation, on Kongzhi Mountain, Ji Xingyao, Mo Tianhe and other descendants of Xianwen's sword house looked pale. They didn't expect that a peerless figure like Yun Qingbai would come to Kongzhi Mountain in person. And the power of one sword cut through the mountain guarding formation. Clang! In the distance, Yun Qingbai raised his hand and waved. The dull long sword returned to the sword case and was carried on his back. That's it. 10 days later, I will wait for Lin Sun at the demon-slaying platform in the medium extreme realm. If he doesn't come, I won't be so polite anymore. Yun Qingbai turned around and left. All the people of Xianwen's sword house looked pale and shocked. On this day, Yun Qinbai appeared in the distant Fire Realm. He broke the Taoist tattoo formation set by Lin Sun with one sword and suppressed the people of Xianwen's sword house. His last message was to fight Lin Sun at the demon-slaying platform 10 days later. The news shocked the whole world. Yun Qinbai fought all the way to the upper 9 realms and defeated all the people related to Lin Sun with invincible momentum. This is obviously to build momentum. How strong is his battle prowess? A few years ago, he was ranked first on the Prodigy Gold leaderboard. How strong is he now? Countless people were discussing. Every region of the upper 9 realm was abuzz with the news. Back then, Yun Qinbai was invincible. He occupied the first spot on the Prodigy Golden leaderboard for many years, and no one could shake him. Even though he hadn't appeared for many years, his ranking on the Prodigy Gold roll had never fallen from the top 10. Now, such a peerless expert had reappeared in the world and displayed unparalleled strength. It was naturally shocking. Do you think Emperor Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and the others, who are ranked at the top of the Heaven's Chosen Gold ranking, can fight against Yun Qinbai? No one could give a clear answer. Everyone knew that the strength of a figure like Yun Qinbai was bound to be unfathomable, and it was impossible to estimate or measure. Demon-slaying platform, Demon God Lin is finished. Many people were gloating over his misfortune. Over the years, Lin Sun's sharpness was almost unstoppable. Countless people who were dissatisfied with Lin Sun were very excited at the moment. For so many days, Lin Sun's friends have been defeated and humiliated one by one, but Lin Sun hasn't appeared from beginning to end. Is he afraid? Lin Sun is hiding in the Flying Star Mountain, saying that he is meditating. In my opinion, he is obviously aware of the threat from Yun Qinbai and is afraid. But no matter what, if he doesn't go to the demon-slaying platform in 10 days, Yun Qinbai will no longer show mercy. Many opponents who had been trampled under Lin Sun's feet were talking unscrupulously, looking forward to the demon-slaying battle in 10 days. Even those friends who were familiar with Lin Sun had a heavy heart. They had all been defeated by Yun Qinbai and deeply understood his horror. They couldn't determine whether Lin Sun would be a match for Yun Qinbai. Flying Star Mountain. Xiao Qinghe, Yu Jianming, Laughing at the Heavens, Yi Chen, Ji Xingyao all came to visit Lin Sun. However, what made them all speechless was that Lin Sun had been practicing in seclusion at such a precarious moment, unaware of what had happened in the outside world during this period of time. What surprised them most was that Lin Sun's seclusion was not to improve his cultivation, but to embark on a new path, body refining. Yun Qinbai is so reckless. After learning what had happened these days, Old Toad, Alu, and the big black bird were all furious. Everyone, don't worry. When my elder brother comes out of seclusion, he will kill Yun Qinbai as soon as possible to avenge you. Old Toad's words were sonorous and his murderous intent was astonishing. The point is, what do you think the odds of Brother Lin winning are if he fights with Yun Qinbai? Ji Xingyao couldn't help asking. The others also looked at Old Toad and the others. They all knew that Old Toad had been with Lin Sun for a long time and should know his strength best. It's hard to say. Old Toad and the others thought seriously for a long time and finally shook their heads. The combat power of people at the level of Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai could not be measured by common sense at all. But we all know that my elder brother has been waiting for a chance to kill Yun Qinbai all these years. It is foreseeable that if he knows the news of Yun Qingbai's appearance, he will definitely not avoid the battle. Alu said firmly. Old Toad and the big blackbird also nodded. They were also clear about this. Seeing this, Ji Xingyao, Xiao Qinghe, Yu Jianming, Yi Chen, and Laughing at the Heavens all felt much more at ease. They all realized that Lin Sun had been waiting for this battle. In the outside world, all the eyes of the upper 9 realms were focused on the medium extreme realm, the demon-slaying platform. No, this battle is absolutely rare in thousands of years. Both Yun Qinbai and Lin Sun are peerless figures who can suppress their peers. No matter who wins, this battle is bound to shake the world and have a far-reaching impact. Countless powerhouses could not sit still anymore. They all set off for the medium extreme realm, wanting to witness this earth-shattering battle with their own eyes. Some people saw Imperial Prince Xiaohao, who was surrounded by stars and the moon, riding a treasure carriage straight to the medium extreme realm. Some people also saw Fairy Ruowu, a pure-blooded descendant of the Vermilion Bird bloodline and now ranked second on the Heavenly Sun Golden List, leaving the place where she cultivated in seclusion. Not only ordinary powerhouses, but also some fierce people who dominated a region could not sit still. This also caused a lot of commotion. My God, almost all the overlords on the Heavenly Sun Golden List have come out and are rushing to the demon-slaying platform. One is a peerless swordsman, and the other is a ferocious demon. Which one is stronger? Now it seems that Yun Qinbai is obviously more likely to win. After all, his strength has long been unquestionable. Not necessarily. Lin Sun has been living in seclusion in recent years, like a dragon hiding in the abyss. Since he set foot in the upper 9 realms, he has never been defeated. No matter what, after this battle, there is bound to be a winner. The entire upper 9 realms seem to be boiling. Countless powerhouses were attracted by this battle, and Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai became the two people who attracted the most attention. Did Lin Sun appear on Flying Star Mountain? Many people were concerned. No, but he definitely can't avoid this battle. Some powerhouses who had been closely watching the movements of Flying Star Mountain gave such an answer. This Lin Sun is really calm. However, it will only be 10 days. After 10 days, let's see if he will appear in front of the demon-slaying platform. Demon-slaying platform, slaying the demon. Yun Qinbai obviously has the determination to kill demon god Lin by choosing this place for the battle. Amidst the discussions, time passed silently. 3 days later, on Flying Star Mountain, Lin Sun, who was in seclusion, faced an unexpected and shocking change during his body-refining cultivation. P.S. The upcoming battle is very stressful and difficult to write. No matter what, Goldfish will try her best to update more tomorrow. Chapter 1329. Wanxiang Ancient Steel. In the cultivation's secret realm transformed by the 36th Wanxiang body refining diagram. Boom! The thunderous sound, like the roar of the gods in the sky, was full of a shocking and powerful oppressive aura. All these sounds came from Lin Sun's body. At this time, he was sitting with his legs crossed, and his qi and blood were boiling and roaring like a furnace. His skin seemed to be poured with the juice of divine gold and jade, shining brilliantly and reflecting a terrible vision. Vaguely, there seemed to be a phantom of a god sitting in it, making a grand sound that resounded through the universe. Even Lin Sun's breath was long, vast, and vigorous like the raging wind and thunder. Since he began to practice with the help of the Wanxiang Ancient Steel, Lin Sun had been tempered and tested again and again. His comprehension and gains on the path of body tempering were also rising steadily. Among these insights, some came from the changes in his own physical strength, and some came from the experience and insights left by the Elephant Martial Emperor. Now, they gathered in Lin Sun's body, making him break through to the King realm in one fell swoop. Moreover, he stepped into the peak. His physical body had become a king, and he'd reached the pinnacle of body refinement. In a short period of less than a month, he'd already attained such attainments in the Tao of body refinement, and it could indeed be said to be world-shaking. If it was spread out, it would inevitably cause a sensation in the world. But for Lin Sun, it seemed to be a matter of course, because from the beginning to the present, he had never encountered any obstacles or barriers, and he had been advancing bravely all the way. All this was related to the solid foundation he had laid in his previous practice, and also to the tempering and tests in the Wanxiang Ancient Steel. After all, the Wanxiang ancient steel was left by a martial emperor, which could be regarded as an incredible treasure for body refining. But more importantly, the spiritual vein in Lin Sun's body played an irreplaceable role in the process of his promotion to the King realm. In the past month, when Lin Sun was practicing in the secret realm transformed by the Wanxiang ancient steel, the spiritual vein was emitting strange fluctuations almost all the time, as if it had been completely awakened. This helped Lin Sun solve all the problems he encountered in body refining without any hindrance or sluggishness, and his progress was also as fast as a hot knife through butter. Especially at this moment, his body refinement cultivation had just advanced into the King realm, and his entire physique had undergone an unprecedented transformation. That feeling was like a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon and undergoing nirvana rebirth. But what followed was a transformation that Lin Sun had not expected at the same time as the transformation of his body and spiritual vein. Wisps of blinding light began to spread from the origin spirit vein. Vaguely, mysterious and obscure sounds of Tao could be heard echoing and vibrating within the veins. If one looked carefully, the jade-white origin spirit vein was like a brilliant sun, and it was emitting unprecedented light. It was divine and resplendent to the extreme. Under the stimulation of such a shocking change, Lin Sun only felt that there seemed to be a peerless stove burning and boiling in his chest. The incomparably terrible strange power made his skin, muscles, bones, skin, acupoints, viscera. It was as if it had been filled with the terrifying power of a landslide and tsunami, and was about to explode. Then, the unspeakable pain made Lin Sun's skin tremble violently, and his handsome face became ferocious and distorted. Ouch! It was too painful. Lin Sun had never expected that the shocking change of the origin spirit vein would be so violent and horrible when he became the King realm. In fact, he was even caught off guard and unprepared. Ah! In the end, Lin Sun couldn't bear it and screamed up to the sky. Boom! From a distance, it could be seen that his whole body was covered by the bright burning light, which was constantly squirming and evaporating, turning into a scene like a big abyss. His body was like a big abyss, burning endlessly. In that instant, the entire mystic realm shook violently. The heavens and the earth were drowned in the brilliant, burning abyss. Fortunately, this was the secret realm transformed by the Wanxiang ancient tablet. If it was in the outside world, such a movement would be enough to attract attention from all directions. It wasn't until a long time later that all the strange phenomena subsided like the tide. When everything calmed down, Lin Sun was lying on the ground with a pale face and unconcealable tiredness between his eyebrows. He was soaked with sweat as if he had just been fished out of the water. However, Lin Sun's black eyes, which were as deep as the abyss, became extremely bright at this moment, with a touch of heartfelt joy. The origin spirit vein had completely transformed, and Lin Sun had also mastered his first innate ability. Whoosh! After a long time, Lin Sun took a deep breath, stood up, and walked out of the secret realm transformed by the Wanxiang ancient tablet. He had been in closed-door cultivation for many days, and now his cultivation had reached the King realm. He had cultivated the illusionary body and mastered the matching illusionary domineering seal. Big brother! Brother Lin finally came out. When they saw Lin Sun's figure coming out of the place of closed-door cultivation, the eyes of Old Toad, Ji Xingyao, and other friends all lit up with relief. At this time, there were only 3 days left before the duel with Yun Qinbai. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Soon, it was time for the duel. The demon-slaying platform in the medium extreme realm. It was a mountain whose top had been flattened like a platform. The ground was stained with dried blood, which hadn't been erased even after thousands of years. This was the demon-slaying platform. It was rumored that a long time ago, there was a peerless saint who killed thousands of foreign enemies in 8 regions for 7 days and 7 nights. The mountain was stained with blood. In the past, the area around the demon-slaying platform was quite remote and deserted. But now, there were countless strong people gathered in this area. The talents, magnates, overlords, fairies, and saintesses of the upper 9 realms had arrived in advance and gathered here recently. Lu Kaiwei, the saintess of the Wutian sect, is here too. Wait, isn't that Yuan Fatian, the peerless villain who ranks 5th on the Heavenly Sun Golden List? Don't make a fuss. These days, almost all the overlords on the Heavenly Sun Golden List have gathered here. There was an uproar in the field. It seemed as if geniuses and experts were numerous like the clouds in the surroundings of the Devil Executioner's platform. The various overlords were gathered here like a group of dazzling stars that each had their own edge, and it caused many experts in the surroundings to be extremely excited. Such a grand occasion could be called unprecedented. At least, in the past in the upper 9 realms, there had never been a battle that attracted the attention of all sides and caused such a great noise. And this was the influence of Yun Qi Bai and Lin Sun in the upper 9 realms now. The former once dominated the world and had the reputation of the first sword practitioner of his generation. His combat power was superb and unique. The latter, since his debut, was like an invincible demon god. He rose by stepping on piles of corpses with an invincible demeanor. Today, a peerless battle would be staged between the two. Who wouldn't pay attention to it? It was no exaggeration to say that no matter who won or lost, this battle was bound to cause a sensation in the world, the ancient Desolation realm, and go down in history. Where's Demon Lin? Hasn't he come yet? Many people were watching nervously. Wait a little longer. He will definitely show up. Otherwise, Yun Qingbai won't show mercy to Lin Sun's friends like before. In the midst of the discussion, a chariot came from the sky, shining like a divine rainbow. Then, Xiaohao, dressed in a jade robe and with a dignified figure, descended in front of the demon-slaying platform surrounded by a group of strong people. Prince Xiaohao. In the field, the atmosphere suddenly became quiet, and all eyes were attracted to him. A few years ago, the first place on the Tianjiao Golden List was undoubtedly occupied by Yun Qingbai, and no one could shake it. But in recent years, the first place on the Tianjiao Golden List had been controlled by Prince Xiaohao. It was said that Prince Xiaohao should be an overlord at the same level as Yun Qingbai. If there was a battle between the two, the impact would definitely be no less than that between Lin Sun and Yun Qingbai. Greetings, Brother Yun. As soon as Xiaohao arrived, he looked at the figure sitting cross-legged on the demon-slaying platform, and his eyes burst with a touch of extraordinary splendor. This person was Yun Qingbai. 10 days ago, he arrived here and sat cross-legged on the ground, holding the sword case in his arms. His eyes were drooping, like an old monk in meditation. In the past 10 days, no matter how the situation changed and the strong people from all sides came, Yun Qingbai never had any reaction. At this moment, Yun Qingbai raised his eyelids slightly and glanced at Xiaohao before he said, "Prince Xiaohao, I've heard a lot about you." Xiaohao smiled lightly and said, "It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. May I ask if Brother Yun would be able to resolve this battle if I plead for leniency?" Yun Qingbai withdrew his gaze and didn't spare Xiaohao another glance before he said indifferently, "Then you have to ask my sword." Xiaohao nodded and withdrew himself. Swoosh! Suddenly, a strand of fiery red light descended from the sky, and then it transformed into a slender figure that was coiled by strands of divine rings of flames. She strode over to the demon-slaying platform, glanced at the nearby Xiaohao, and then glanced at Yun Qingbai. In the end, she didn't say a word and floated to the side. But at this moment, the surroundings were in an uproar, and the gazes everyone shot at this beautiful figure carried astonishment, admiration, respect, burning desire, and so on and so forth. Fairy Ruowu. She was a pure-blooded descendant of the vermilion bird bloodline. Since she was born a few years ago, she had always occupied the top 3 positions on the Prodigy Gold rankings, and she was viewed as a peerless prodigy that was extremely likely to shake Xiaohao's first position. In the following period of time, Wang Xuanyu of the Greater One Taoist sect, Mi Hengzhen of the Sun-Moon Divine Hall, Yi Mo of the Origins Divine Sect, and some peerless overlord-level figures whose names had shaken the upper 9 territories arrived one after another. The atmosphere in the surroundings became more and more restless and turbulent. Where's Demon God Lin? Is he coming or not? Up until evening, many people were already impatient from waiting. On the other hand, peerless figures like Xiaohao and Fairy Ruowu stood silently without the slightest anxiousness or impatience. The sunset was like a burning flame, and it was bright red like blood as it dyed the sky red. A murderous aura filled the heavens and the earth. Suddenly, a figure walked over from the extremely distant sky. His sleeves fluttered in the wind and his figure was tall. When he walked, he was calm as if he was taking a stroll in a courtyard. He had his hands behind his back and his black eyes were calm. His aura was unfathomable like a bottomless abyss, and it was like the sunset of fire. It illuminated his figure as if he had walked out of a divine being and illuminated the sky. P.S. There are 3 chapters tonight, and the 3rd chapter is a large chapter with a lot of words. It should be able to satisfy everyone. Chapter 1330. Lin Sun. At this moment, countless gazes simultaneously looked towards the figure that was flying over from the sky. The afterglow of the sunset made his figure look like an immortal descending to the world. Lin Sun, you're finally here. On the demon-slaying platform, Yun Qinbai, who was meditating like an old monk, stood up at this moment. His eyes were like a pair of vortexes, flowing with streaks of sword intent like electric arcs. The divine light that burst out instantly tore the void and collided with the cold luster in Lin Sun's eyes. There was a deafening explosion in the void, and sparks flew everywhere. Countless people held their breath and concentrated. They all realized that this long-awaited peerless battle, which was enough to shock both ancient and modern times, was finally about to begin. It's him. Lu Saiwei's eyes were clear. She hadn't seen Lin Sun for many years. Compared with the past, Lin Sun was no longer the same as before. This made her sigh in her heart. In the past, she once gave Lin Sun a great way hidden king token, thinking that only by entering a sacred place to cultivate could Lin Sun be protected and not be the enemy of the whole world. But now this approach was obviously a little naive. Lin Sun didn't need to enter any sect at all to be invincible. Sure enough, it's Demon Lin. Is he forced to show up, or is he confident enough to fight against Yun Qinbai? There was a commotion in the field. Whether it was the ordinary strongmen or the overlords on the Tianjiao Golden List, they couldn't calm down. Lin Sun, a legendary figure like a demon. Since he started cultivating, he had been alone, but he had killed so many people that blood flowed like a river. He was unstoppable and unstoppable. Now, even if his name had never appeared on the Tianjiao Golden List, who dared to ignore his existence? Think of the peerless figures who had died or been defeated by him, such as Mingzi, Gu Fouzi, Wu Lingdao, by Longting. They couldn't even count them with their fingers. It could be said that Lin Sun's prestige was completely built on mountains of corpses and seas of blood, so people had to be afraid of him. He is very strong, indisputably strong. But it's ridiculous to say that Demon Lin is Yun Qingbai's opponent. At the same time, some sneered. Most of them were defeated by Lin Sun. Brother Lin, this battle is unavoidable. I came here this time because I'm willing to play the role of a protector. If anyone here dares to have ill intent during the battle, then they'll have to go through me, Xiaohao. Suddenly, Imperial Prince Xiaohao's clear voice resounded through the heavens and the earth. For a time, the hearts of everyone in the surroundings shook, and they revealed various expressions. Obviously, anyone who dared to ruin this battle and take the opportunity to harm Lin Sun would completely offend Prince Xiaohao. Of course. On the other side, Fairy Ruowu, who was bathed in flames, also nodded. Such a battle was rarely seen since time immemorial, and could be said to be peerless. If it was spoiled by someone, then it would simply be the greatest disrespect to this battle, and it was something that no one would be able to endure. For a time, many overlords who had long been famous in the upper 9 realms declared that they would only watch the battle and not intervene. Whoever dared to overstep would be their enemy. Yun Chi Bai. Lin Sun looked at Yun Chi Bai, who stood on the demon-cleaving platform like a peerless sword. There was no emotional fluctuation in his eyes, which were as calm as water. This was the second time he met Yun Chi Bai. Compared with a few years ago, at this time, Yun Chi Bai had not only recovered from his injuries, but also reached the 7 tribulation realm of longevity. Moreover, Yun Chi Bai's aura faintly had the momentum to soar into the sky. It was extremely condensed, giving people a feeling that his body was in harmony with all transformations, and his will was like a mountain communicating with heaven and earth. If you don't kill a snake, you will be harmed by it. When he fled from the Buddha land, he was so embarrassed and miserable. Now, he has become stronger again. Although Lin Sun thought so in his heart, there was no emotional fluctuation. He had been preparing for today's battle for too long, and he was only waiting for this day. In the past, whenever Yun Chi Bai was mentioned, he would feel hatred, pressure, and heavy, as if he was bearing an invisible pressure. Because at that time, he did not have absolute confidence to defeat Yun Chi Bai. But now it was completely different. Lin Sun, I have been waiting for you for 10 days. Yun Chi Bai said. His eyes, which were surging with a whirlpool of sword intent, emitted a shocking splendor. I have to admit that your progress has exceeded my expectations. If you were given another 10 years, no, 5 years, even I wouldn't dare to say that I would be able to kill you. Cut the crap. You and I have to settle this. Today, either you or I die, and this battle will come to an end. Lin Sun said lightly, and there was a touch of killing intent in his eyes. For Yun Chi Bai, there was no need for any reason at all. He must die. Only in this way could Lin Sun feel at ease. Yun Chi Bai might be the most powerful peerless talent in the world, and he might have a terrifying strength that was enough to surpass all others. However, Lin Sun had long been fearless since he started his cultivation. Fearless. These 2 words represented all the painstaking efforts Lin Sun had made since he was young. Others didn't understand, but only he knew. You're right. The hatred between us will not end until one of us dies. Today, only one of us can live. When Yun Chi Bai said this, he suddenly raised his head, and his whole body emitted a terrifying and unparalleled sword chi, which tore the sky like a storm. Let's fight. Today, in front of countless peers, I, Yun Chi Bai, will kill you, Lin Sun, on this demon-slaying platform with the sword in my hand. With an indifferent and cold voice, Yun Chi Bai rose out of thin air. At this moment, the 2 attacked at the same time. Boom! Lin Sun stepped on the sky and punched. It was simple, direct, and otherworldly, but when the fist force burst out, it made the world shake violently, as if the sky was shaken. It's starting. In the field, countless people held their breath and watched nervously. Peerless overlords such as Prince Xiaohao and Fairy Ruawu also looked serious. They spread their spiritual awareness and concentrated on the fight. Condense. Different from Lin Sun's domineering fist force, Yun Chi Bai waved his sleeve, and a brilliant sword chi of 3,000 meters suddenly condensed in the void, flowing with Taoist light. At this moment, the whole sky was illuminated by this sword. It was a stunning scene. Chop! With a thought from Yun Chi Bai, the sword chi, which had the power to crush mountains and destroy everything, chopped down with an earth-shaking roar. Bang! 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 The sword chi and the fist force collided, and the void burst into pieces. Endless light rain poured down, which was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. However, to everyone's surprise, Lin Sun's fist was not only domineering, but also extremely condensed. In a series of collisions and explosions, the fist force was still unstoppable. In the end, amidst a deafening explosion, The 3-kilometer-long strand of sword chi transformed into a multicolored rain of light that scattered down. There were exclamations all over the field. However, before everyone could react, along with a command in Yun Qingbai's heart, the rain of sword chi that covered the sky actually seemed to have come to life. It transformed into strands of dense and crisscrossing sword chi, and it was like a river of stars that swept down from the sky. Lin Sun's punch was dissolved in the air. There was silence in the field, and everyone was in a state of shock. In their first confrontation, it was merely a single strike, but the strength they revealed was so formidable that it could simply be said to be world-shocking, and it possessed a terrifying might that could alarm ghosts and gods. Lin Sun's fist force was like a hammer, shaking the sky. Yun Qingbai's sword chi derived all kinds of peerless mysteries, which was enough to easily kill his peers. However, this was just a casual attack from the two of them. If they fought with all their strength, how amazing would the power be? Everyone was excited as they waited to see what would happen. "Come again!" Lin Sun shouted. His feet stepped on the gangdo, and his fists were like a waterfall. As he punched out, the void collapsed violently wherever he passed. From afar, an incomparably long and narrow ravine had appeared in the sky. It was a spectacle. The fist force was like a big abyss, which had the momentum to swallow all directions. Boom! Such a fist force even made the mountains within 1,000 miles seem to be unable to bear such pressure. They collapsed, and the grass, trees, and rocks burst into powder. All the heroes in the field unconsciously retreated and resisted, looking surprised. When they saw Lin Sun's power with their own eyes, they found that he was even more powerful than the legend. 3 meanings of swordsmanship rise. Yun Qingbai's clothes were fluttering, and his figure was proud and arrogant. He held his hands in the air. Suddenly, 3 sword chi appeared between heaven and earth. The first sword chi blended black and white, and yin and yang flowed, dividing clear and turbid. The second sword chi rotated, illusory like the shadow of the sky. The third sword chi rose to the sky, and its sharpness made the world dim. These 3 swords came from the great yin-yang sword scripture, the great Zhou void sword scripture, and the great heavenly sword scripture. Now, it was operated by Yun Qingbei in an instant, which could be called the pinnacle of his swordsmanship. In an instant, the world was filled with the brilliant vision of the 3 sword chi. When sword demon Yechen, Yimov, and other swordsmanship geniuses saw this scene, they all looked dignified, and a touch of bitterness appeared in their hearts. Yun Qingbei deserved to be the first swordsman of his generation in the world. Amazing! Even Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and others couldn't help but admire and feel amazed. They thought that if they were in Yun Qingbai's position, they would have to use their unique skills to fight against him. Boom! In the face of this scene, Lin Sun didn't retreat, but moved forward. He turned into a real dragon descending from the sky and punched down. In the eyes of an outsider, it was like a comet from outer space, and it dragged along a peerlessly resplendent shadow as it tore through space and violently collided with the 3 strands of sword chi that shot out together. Boom! As if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking, the unparalleled strength swept across. The sky above the demon-slaying platform was completely in turmoil. The sword chi and the fist radiance splashed, making a loud noise like the roar of demons. The aftermath swept across the world for 3,000 miles in all directions. Except for a small group of peerless overlords who were still in place, the other overlords all exerted their strength to resist, but they still had to retreat until they retreated thousands of meters away. Under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the void above the demon-slaying platform was like a broken rag, with intertwined cracks and gullies, turbulence, clouds, and rolling lights. It seemed that the sky there had been blown up. However, who had the upper hand in this attack? Everyone's eyes widened. Yun Qingbei, use your real skills. These are far from enough. Suddenly, Lin Sun's indifferent voice sounded. Chapter 1331. Everyone was surprised. A bright figure flew across the sky, surrounded by flowing Taoist light, and turned into a scene of the abyss, illuminating the sky. It was Lin Sun. He was unscathed, and his divine power became more and more dazzling. Boom! He stepped forward, and the void burst into cracks in all directions like a spider web. His figure soared into the sky like a dragon wandering in the void. He punched out. Humph! Almost at the same time, Yun Qingbai's figure appeared under the sky. His white clothes fluttered, his black hair fluttered, and his face was calm. Only in his palm, he suddenly grabbed, and a sword chi turned into a whirlpool of sword wheel, whistling away. Boom! Boom! A fierce battle broke out there. The sun and the moon lost their light, and the universe was overturned. The blazing sword chi and fist radiance, like the most brilliant light in the world, poured down. Vaguely, there were bursts of Sanskrit chanting Taoist sounds, stirring the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The whole audience was shocked, and many people looked aghast. In the sky, it didn't look like a fight between two people. It was clearly a collision between a peerless sword god and a peerless demon god. It was like the ancient war between gods and demons. It was incredible. Even the overlords of the 7th Retribution Realm couldn't help but show a shocked look, and their hearts trembled slightly. Even if they were in the same realm as Lin Sun and Yun Qingbei, in terms of combat power, they were far inferior to them. As for Imperial Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, Yi Mo, Wang Xuanyu, Mi Hengzhen, and other peerless overlords, although they didn't say a word, the battle intent in their hearts was aroused after witnessing such a peerless battle. Such a battle caused their hearts to surge with excitement. As for those who were slightly weaker, their minds had been shocked, and they looked dull, unable to see the details of the battle at all. Break! Above the void, Lin Sun's breath was like an abyss. In an instant, a fist force burst out, and an extremely powerful momentum also spread out. This fist was like an immortal performing martial arts, which was rare in the world. Even the mighty, who created the 9 strikes for shaking heaven, had to admire Lin Sun's fist. Boom! In the end, Yun Qingbai's vortex sword wheel couldn't hold on any longer and was immediately broken. The terrifying fist force rushed toward him like a flood. Bang! Although Yun Qingbei had managed to neutralize the punch, Li Changshuo's strength was not as powerful as before. However, the space under Yun Qingbei's feet directly exploded. Clearly, the might of this punch was too terrifying. It even affected Yun Qingbei, causing his figure to sway. Nearby, the heavens and the earth shook, and some of the ripples that spread out caused some experts who couldn't dodge in time to stagger back and cough up blood. Again, Lin Sun's fighting spirit was burning, and his blood and chi were surging. His figure flashed as if he'd teleported in the air, and then he raised his fist and smashed it out. He seemed to possess a spirit that could devour the mountains and rivers, and he possessed the courage and boldness of abandoning reality. Boom! The battle grew more and more intense. The two of them fought each other into the 9 heavens and swept through the surroundings, and the aftershock of the battle was like a vast torrent that swept out ceaselessly. Retreat. Dodge. This isn't something we can deal with. This is too savage. All the spectators retreated again and again, and their expressions changed indeterminately. They were both astounded and shocked. If this battle hadn't taken place in the sky, it would have definitely caused an unpredictable disaster. Prince Xiaohao and Fairy Ruowu also had to retreat, otherwise, they would definitely be involved in the battlefield. This is the real peerless battle, isn't it? Some people were in a trance. In the same realm, the combat power mastered by the cultivators varied greatly. Some were just ordinary King Realm cultivators, who couldn't even be called the top. Some stood on the top of the mountain, overlooking their peers. However, Yun Qingbei and Lin Sun were different. On the top, both of them had reached the peak. They had a peerless and invincible demeanor, and they had the foundation to respect their peers. They were incredibly powerful. Bang! After another collision, Yun Qingbai's figure retreated violently. He was shaken by Lin Sun again. This caused a burst of exclamations in the field. Before, most of the strong cultivators were unanimously optimistic about Yun Qingbei and had unquestionable absolute confidence in his strength. But since the beginning of the battle, Yun Qingbei not only didn't gain any advantage, but was also shaken back by Lin Sun many times. Who wouldn't be shocked? The world underestimates the horror of my elder brother. The old toad was very proud. From the moment he hibernated on Flying Star Mountain, he had noticed that Lin Sun had long ignored the threat of Yun Qingbei. Yes, while Yun Qingbei was still thinking about fighting back, my elder brother was wholeheartedly studying the cultivation of body refining. This is the gap between us. Alu also nodded, his heart surging. Don't be complacent, you two. The battle has just begun. The big black bird reminded them. Don't you see that neither Lin Sun nor Yun Qingbei has shown their real trump cards? Not only the big black bird, but also some peerless overlords noticed this. This caused them to feel an indescribable bitterness in their hearts. Merely the strength that the two of them were using right now was already a great threat to them. They really didn't know what kind of terrifying trump cards they would use when they fought desperately. It's time to end the fun. Suddenly, an imposing aura that would rather break than bend surged out from Yun Qingbei's body. Boom! Suddenly, a group of sword chi, like a steady tide, rose out of thin air. The sword chi was like a tide, like a long river, dense and endless. Each sword chi was branded with a unique aura of the Great Way, including the 5 elements, yin and yang, wind and thunder, cloud, mist, buzz. Buzz, buzz. In an instant, the world was filled with the sound of swords, and the dense sword chi covered the world, covering the sun and the moon. 108,000 swords. In the indifferent voice, the sword chi all over the sky roared together, and under the horrified gazes of the crowd, it turned into a huge vortex. It was composed of 108,000 swords, like a sword domain, spinning in the void, making the world seem to be distorted. The nearby area was crushed, collapsed, and exploded. The crowd was shocked. Their eyes widened, and they felt a chill in their hearts. Was this Yun Qingbei's real strength? One sword turned into thousands of Tao, and he controlled them all. Yun Qingbei has already reached an unimaginably terrifying level in sword Tao. Emperor Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and other peerless overlords were also shocked, and their faces were extremely solemn. This blow was like thousands of swords, with the momentum to destroy the world. At this time, even Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. From the beginning to the end, he had never underestimated Yun Qingbei's combat strength and treated him as his #1 enemy. But as soon as this sword appeared, Lin Sun realized that Yun Qingbei was stronger than he had imagined. Thinking of this, Lin Sun didn't slow down at all. Boom! The punch was ordinary, without any momentum, or even a trace of sharpness. But as soon as this punch appeared, everyone's face changed. This punch was indescribably divine. Perhaps it could be called Tao. There was great beauty in the world without words. An elephant was hidden in the invisible. Any skill in the world that had reached the extreme and transcendent level had lost its earth-shaking aura and dazzling appearance. What it had was a kind of truth. This truth was in line with Tao. Many strongmen were dazzled and in a trance. If Yun Qingbei's sword could penetrate heaven and earth, then Lin Sun's sword could be said to be like riding the Tao. Each of them had their own style and could amaze the world. Boom! The huge whirlpool of sword chi stretched across the world, swallowed up the universe, and distorted everything. However, when this punch shot forward like a hot knife through butter, it crushed and shattered the numerous strands of sword chi, causing deafening sounds of collision to resound. Incomparably violent turbulence swept between the heaven and the earth. Some overlords' divine senses were shaken and groaned. Some overlords' minds were impacted, and their mouths and noses were bleeding. Some were pale, trembling, and paralyzed. The only reason was that the might of this confrontation was too great. Boom! Accompanied by an earth-shattering rumble, the gigantic vortex of sword chi suddenly collapsed, and the surging sword chi scattered in the void. Was it resolved? No. At this moment, Yun Qingbai suddenly let out a long roar and crossed his fingers. 10,000 swords in one. The sword chi all over the sky suddenly began to merge with each other. In the blink of an eye, 108,000 swords were integrated into one sword. The sword was 3 feet and 2 inches long, like an illusion, and it stretched across the sky. It was just one sword, but it gave people the feeling that it was the master of heaven and earth. Nothing in the world could stop its sharpness. So strong. At this moment, the expressions of Xiao Hao and the others had changed completely, because they'd sensed a terrifying and threatening aura of slaughter from this sword strike. Swish! The sword slashed out. Lin Sun's clothes fluttered, and his body was like a deep abyss. He took a deep breath and pressed out his finger. The twinkling of spring and autumn. However, Lin Sun operated it with the devouring star way. In the general trend of spring and autumn, various forces of great ways appeared and burst out together. Boom! In the deafening collision sound, Lin Sun's figure was slashed back a few steps, and he coughed up blood. Looking at Yun Qingbai again, he just shook for a while, and his face was slightly pale. Except for that, there was no trace of injury. There was a dead silence in the field. Did Devil Lin suffer a heavy setback in this blow? Everyone had seen with their own eyes that Lin Sun had shaken Yun Qingbai several times since the beginning. He was so powerful that he caused a great sensation in the field. But now, it seemed that he couldn't resist Yun Qingbai's sword attack. The faces of Old Toad, Alu, and the big black bird all darkened, and they were uncertain. And the strong people who had been supporting Yun Qingbai couldn't help but burst into cheers at this moment, looking excited and excited. Lin Sun is very strong, but he is still young. When Yun Qingbai set foot on the road of Tao, Lin Sun was not yet born. In terms of foundation, Lin Sun is a little inferior. Yi Mo sighed softly. Only the current overlords knew how terrible Yun Qingbai was. It was a misfortune to be born in the same era as him. And Lin Sun couldn't even be called Yun Qingbai's peer in age. This was the difference between early cultivation and late cultivation. So, Devil Lin is bound to lose this time? Some people found it hard to accept. Lin Sun had never been defeated since he started cultivating. Was he going to be defeated by Yun Qingbai? Not necessarily. Suddenly, Prince Xiaohao narrowed his eyes, and his divine light surged. Now, the real show has just begun. Everyone was astounded and bewildered. At this time, Lin Sun suddenly said, Yun Qingbai, take out your sword, or you are doomed to die unwillingly. His voice was flat, and he raised his hand to wipe the blood off the corner of his mouth. It seemed that he had been defeated, but his eyes were bright and frightening. Ridiculous! Yun Qingbai looked indifferent. Boom! Lin Sun said no more and attacked again. It was still a simple punch, but as soon as it was launched, the clouds collapsed and the sky seemed to be broken, producing a deafening explosion. The power of the punch seemed to be overwhelming the world. How is this possible? All the heroes in the field were dumbfounded. The contrast was too great. Before, Lin Sun was defeated, but now he was much stronger than before. Did he not attack with all his strength at all? Their guess was right. It was also at this time that Lin Sun used the wrath of Yazi and the ultimacy of Fight Saint method. This is Lin Sun's unfathomable foundation. When everyone thinks he has tried his best, there will always be a bigger surprise. Prince Xiaohao sighed. Break! In the face of this punch, Yun Qingbai narrowed his eyes slightly, but he was not afraid. He displayed his swordsmanship. Swish! The dazzling sword chi set off a sky full of sword shadows, making the world tumble and the sun and moon invert. It fiercely chopped the oncoming punch. Boom! The fist and sword chi collided and both collapsed. It was a draw. I told you, your strength is not enough. Lin Sun had already broken through the air to kill. He was like a god or a demon, attacking the 9 heavens with the intention to kill. Boom! After another confrontation, Yun Qingbai's figure shook, and his face instantly became cold. How did demon god Lin suddenly become so powerful? He was clearly on the brink of collapsing just now, in the field. All the heroes were stunned and inexplicably shocked. I'm sure that Lin Sun definitely held back his strength. Many of the peerless overlords felt their hearts tremble as they were shocked. To be able to conserve his strength in a battle with a peerless enemy like Yun Qinbai, just how strong was this demon god Lin? Kill. As soon as Lin Sun punched out, the world rumbled and yin and yang reversed, plowing a shocking ravine in the sky. Looking from a distance, it was really no different from tearing the sky apart. Break. Yun Qingbai's eyes flickered. The sword intent surged like the ocean, and his robe fluttered as he slashed out with his sword. Lin Sun did not move. As for Yun Qinbai, his sword chi was broken, and his figure was knocked back 3 meters by the punch. It could be clearly seen that his face was green and white, and he seemed to be very uncomfortable. Again, Lin Sun became more and more powerful. His figure was like a stream of light, rushing toward Yun Qinbai. This fist pierced through the fighting bull, possessing unparalleled might. All the people present were shocked by such a disdainful posture. It was as if they were witnessing a god coming down from the 9 heavens. The punch made them feel suffocated. Bang! Yun Qinbai was knocked back again. He couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. His long hair was scattered, and he looked a little embarrassed. Everyone was shocked. Lin Sun had been severely defeated before. But now everything had been reversed. This series of changes was completed in a short period of time. It was incredibly fast, and it also caught everyone off guard. They were inexplicably shocked. Very good. You will have no regrets dying under my heavenly sword. Suddenly, Yun Qinbai took a deep breath. His expression was resolute, and his momentum soared to the sky. With a clang, the sword case on his back opened, and a dull and ancient sword that had been sealed in it was revealed at this moment. P.S. This is a chapter of 4,000 words. There will be 3 chapters tonight. I hope that when you enjoy reading it, don't forget to vote for the monthly ticket. In addition, you don't have to wait anymore. It's over for tonight. Goldfish had many ideas about how to end this battle, but at present, she had not decided which one to choose. Tonight, Goldfish needed to think about it seriously. Everyone hated Yun Qinbai to the core. But apart from hatred, the image of this person was a little thin and not complete. Goldfish was thinking. Such an important character had run through many plots in the previous chapters. Even if he died, he had to die in a way that satisfied her and everyone else. She had to let everyone understand why Yun Qinbai was such a villain. She had to make his image more three-dimensional and complete. These were the problems that Goldfish needed to solve urgently. Therefore, she couldn't continue writing. It was easy to kill him, but how to kill him was not easy at all. The above PS was free. Chapter 1332. Everyone knew that ever since Yun Qinbai had started cultivating, he had never hung his sword at his waist. Instead, he carried it on his back. This was his heart to cultivate the sword. The sword was his Tao. How could he be inferior to himself? This small action of carrying a sword on his back led a trend in the White Jade capital. Countless young sword cultivators imitated him. This was not Yun Qingbai's first move, but it was because of him that it became popular. At that moment, Yun Qinbai opened the sword case on his back, and the heaven-piercing sword appeared. This sword had been left behind by the founder of the heaven-piercing sword sect. It was 2 feet and 3 inches long and 3 fingers wide. Its entire body was dull and lusterless. It was simple and imposing, heavy and sharp. This sword was originally a sage treasure. However, ever since Yun Qinbai obtained it, its power had been sealed, and Yun Qinbai had nurtured it day and night. This sword would not be used unless it was used against a powerful enemy. Therefore, people rarely saw Yun Qingbai use this sword to kill enemies. But now, the sword was unsheathed. Clang! The sword hummed like thunder, shaking the heavens and earth. As soon as the heaven-piercing sword appeared, the heavens and earth shook violently. Rays of sword intent appeared, crisscrossing and spreading out in the air. Heavy sword shadows, dazzling sword rays, surging sword chi, flowing sword aura, covered the heavens and earth. It was like a sword domain. Yun Qingbai, who was controlling all of this, was like a legendary peerless sword god. He became the most dazzling light in the world. Even though they were extremely far away, many powerful cultivators still felt a sharp pain in their eyes. They felt as if their skin was being cut by swords, and their minds were shocked. They were terrified. Even peerless overlords like Emperor Xiaohao and Fairy Ruowu looked extremely solemn. They circulated their qi silently as if they were facing a powerful enemy. This is the real Yun Qingbai. He's an invincible master of the sword Dao. The other overlords were also shocked. Yun Qingbai had opened the sword case and used the heaven-piercing sword. This meant that he was going all out. He was going to use his strongest trump card. Even if they used their full strength, they were not confident that they could resist Yun Qingbai. In particular, some geniuses and geniuses who also cultivated the sword couldn't help but clench their fists. They felt a silent shock. Sky-twisting sword domain. Suddenly, Yun Qingbai attacked. With a clang, the heaven-reaching sword turned in the void. Layers of sword qi turned into a curtain that covered the sky. Yin and yang rotated inside, and the sword qi surged endlessly. All right. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun attacked with his fist. The surging, overbearing, and firm fist force was like the manifestation of the Tao as it collided with the sword images that covered the sky, and it threw the heavens and the earth into disorder. In the eyes of outsiders, in the sky, Lin Sun was barehanded as he charged into the sword domain screen, and he flashed through the sword images, shattered the sword qi, and extinguished the sword lights. He was so strong that it was a complete mess. However, no matter how he charged forward, he was unable to break through the sword domain's barrier. Kill! Yun Qingbai's sleeves fluttered and his long hair fluttered. With his words, thousands of sparkling and resplendent flying swords suddenly appeared in the sky, turning sword domain and slashed down. Bang, bang, bang! Each flying sword had the power to kill ghosts and gods. Even though Lin Sun broke them one by one, his figure was suppressed and constantly shaken. Outside the arena, everyone was astonished. Previously, demon god Lin had turned the tide of the battle with his cosmos-shattering fist. He had swept away the disadvantageous situation, causing Yun Qingbai to cough up blood and be injured. However, with the appearance of the heavenly sword and Yun Qingbai's display of his trump card, the advantage that demon god Lin had painstakingly regained was gone. It was no exaggeration to say that at this moment, be it Yun Qingbai or Lin Sun, a casual attack was enough to pose a fatal threat to the other experts outside the arena. Both of them were abnormally strong and ridiculously strong. However, there was no doubt that Yun Qingbai was once again displaying his suppressive strength in the battle. Kill! Yun Qingbai flicked his fingers with an indifferent expression. In midair, the heavenly sword glowed, and the sword qi that covered the sky circulated, making the power of the sky turning sword domain even stronger. A peerless swordsman should be like this. Many people sighed with emotion. However, at this moment, Lin Sun's voice suddenly sounded. Break. A single word, calm and relaxed, casual and natural. Then, the sky-turning sword domain was torn apart by a dazzling sharpness, like a hot knife through butter, and exploded in the void. In the midst of the rain of light, Lin Sun's figure rushed out. A broken blade circled around him, and waves of clear, heavenly sounds drifted through the universe. In the distance, Yun Qingbai's pupils constricted. Kill! Kill! The two voices came from Yun Qingbai and Lin Sun. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the heavenly sword and the broken blade swept up, setting off an unparalleled sharpness as they collided in the void. The former displayed the sword domain, and the sword chi whistled like a divine light. The murderous aura shook the universe and shook the stars. The latter reflected the secret of the 6 slashes of heavenly yuan. Its sharpness was like a stream of light, and wherever it passed, everything was destroyed like a bubble. Looking from afar, it made people tremble and feel an indescribable sense of suffocation. That was because the power produced by the confrontation was far beyond their imagination. The heavenly sword is being restrained in the arena. Countless people were moved. It was also at this time that they finally realized that Yun Chi Bai might have a trump card that he was proud of, but demon god Lin also had a trump card. Perhaps Lin Sun had cultivated more than 10 years later than Yun Chi Bai, so he was a little weaker in terms of congenital foundation. But in this world, the strong and the weak were never judged by the length of cultivation. For example, Lin Sun had only cultivated for a few decades, but his combat power was strong enough to make countless old monsters of the King realm in the ancient Desolation territory bow their heads in shame. Now, the battle with Yun Chi Bai was the same. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun attacked again. Yun Chi Bai, even the heavenly sword can't save you. Lin Sun looked indifferent. How strong was Yun Chi Bai? He didn't know. But Lin Sun knew that as early as half a year ago, when he was dormant in the Flying Star Mountain, he was not afraid of all his peers. He was just waiting for a chance to kill Yun Chi Bai. Today, all their grudges would be put to an end. Perhaps Yun Chi Bai still had many trump cards, but they didn't matter anymore. The heavenly sword is a foreign object that can only be used by me. My swordsmanship never needs the help of other forces. It's the same to kill you. In the face of Lin Sun's attack, Yun Chi Bai was still calm. However, there was an incomparably terrifying aura emanating from his body. It was visible to the naked eye that the hair on his temples gradually turned gray, and his crystal-clear skin lost its luster. But his eyes became sharper, and his aura became stronger. Just standing there made the void collapse, as if it couldn't bear his power. The whole audience was restless, and many people's faces changed. Prince Xiaohao and other peerless overlords were shocked. It could be predicted that Yun Chi Bai was using his real trump card. At this time, Lin Sun couldn't help frowning and showing a solemn expression. He sensed a dangerous aura from Yun Chi Bai. Boom! Without hesitation, Lin Sun stretched his body, and there was a roar like the thunder god's drum inside and outside his body. Every inch of his skin and pores released brilliant Taoist light, which was as bright as jade. At this moment, he used the eternal leakless method passed down by Xiankong Ghost King to release his combat power completely. Buzz. On the opposite side, Yun Chi Bai stood in the void. The power of heaven and earth seemed to be attracted, rumbling and gathering towards his figure. With him as the center, it carried the power of creation of heaven and earth. Crack! Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and the void exploded. At the same time, a touch of determination flashed in Yun Chi Bai's eyes. He put his fingers together like a sword and gently chopped in the void. A sword chi, which had been accumulating in his body for a long time, rose to the sky now. The power that gathered from the nearby heaven and earth seemed to have found a target to attach to, and all merged into the sword, making the sword chi instantly become the most dazzling light between heaven and earth. The sky there was shattered and collapsed, and there was no light. Only a touch of sword chi seemed immortal and eternal. Seeing this scene, everyone forgot to breathe and was dumbfounded. The legendary ancient sword immortal was just like this, right? Open! Lin Sun punched out. In an instant, boundless power surged out of his body, and the boundless Taoist light illuminated the sky. His power was released to the extreme at this moment and turned into a punch. Boom! At that moment, the world seemed to be turned upside down, and the sky reflected the scene of doomsday. At that moment, all the heroes outside the field were shocked, and their eyes froze. At that moment, Yun Qingbai's sword Qi and Lin Sun's fist collided. It was like the most amazing encounter in the history of all time, and its power was indescribable. It was just like the great beauty of heaven and earth, indescribable. Boom. Then, the whole audience was deafened. Everything was blurry, and their divine senses were blocked. They could no longer see the battle in the void. Even Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and others had to release their own power to resolve the terrifying aftermath of the confrontation. The peerless battle, the shaking of heaven and earth, the birth of strange phenomena, and the collapse of all things, was nothing more than this. This kind of power can be called the real peak. Some peerless overlords were frightened. Compared with this, whether it was Yun Qingbei or Lin Sun, the power they showed had far exceeded that of a real overlord. It was too shocking. Since the ancient times until now, there have been many dazzling figures. However, amongst those of the same generation, the brilliance of the two of them is sufficient to shake the world. It's a pity that in this peerless battle, someone is destined to die under all kinds of shocked, horrified, and emotional gazes. The field of vision finally became clear, and people could see clearly. In the sky, Lin Sun's figure had retreated more than 10 steps. His long hair was scattered, his cheeks were pale, and his clothes were torn. A trace of blood appeared on the corner of his mouth. As for Yun Qingbei, his long hair was gray, his body was haggard, and his skin was dim. But his aura was still so powerful that it made people tremble. This sword has been blocked. But it seems that Demon Lin has suffered a setback. In the field, all the heroes widened their eyes. Yun Qingbei's previous sword was simply invincible, enough to make people desperate. But in the end it was blocked. But at the same time, although Lin Sun blocked this sword, it was not easy. It seemed that it was still a confrontation with no winner or loser. But the next moment Lin Sun said calmly, "Such a sword must be very difficult for you. How many times can you use it? Yun Qingbei, today, at this moment, you are still not as good as me." His voice was full of invincible disdain. P.S. It's a little difficult to write. Don't worry. Chapter 1333. Ridiculous. Yun Qingbei looked cold. At this time, how could he not see that Lin Sun's combat power was far beyond his expectation? Back then, he was chased by Lin Sun near the Buddha land, because he was at the critical moment of refining the talent power of ancient Buddha and couldn't exert all his strength at all. This was regarded as a great shame by him. But in fact, he didn't take Lin Sun seriously at that time. Now, after several years of silence, he broke out of the closed-door training and became more powerful than before. He thought it would be a piece of cake to kill Lin Sun. But who would have thought that the development of the situation made him feel surprised, shocked, puzzled, and dignified? Yun Qingbei had never imagined that this infant, who should have died back then, would actually be able to contend against him in such an unparalleled manner. He never thought that at this time, he would feel heavy pressure and have to use all his potential and trump card. This series of unexpected events was like a series of accidents. Even Yun Qingbei sensed the threat. He had to be on the alert and move with all his strength. Confrontation. Taking a deep breath, Yun Qingbei's clothes fluttered and he chopped again. His hair suddenly turned into the color of frost and snow, and his skin was like dehydrated bark, withered and lusterless. Before the sword was raised, his hair was already frosty. All the heroes present were in a daze. Buzz. A brilliant sword chi burst out from Yun Qingbei's body in the clanging sound of killing. It was so brilliant that it couldn't be looked at directly. Compared with the sword just now, it was even more powerful. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun also took a deep breath and ran the leakless permanence to the full. Together with the fury of Yazi and the battle saint method, he mobilized all his strength and punched. Rumble, the deafening collision and confrontations spread in the field. Soon, everyone understood why Lin Sun dared to say that he was not as good as him at this time. In such a confrontation, Yun Qingbai's sword qi was peerless, which could shock the past and the present. It was unparalleled. Lin Sun was indeed shaken. He kept staggering back, his face became paler and paler, and he even coughed up blood frequently. However, he had never been completely suppressed. On the contrary, his imposing aura was like flames, his fighting spirit like flames, and he was like an undefeatable and eternal existence. He deduced his own Tao, utilized his own techniques, and became more courageous the more he suffered. During this entire process, Yun Qingbai's long hair seemed as if it had been dyed with snow, and it was white like silver. Moreover, numerous cracks had appeared on the skin of his body, and it was like withered bark that was about to transform into rotten wood. This caused everyone's hearts to tremble. At this point in the battle, everyone was able to discern that this unparalleled battle had entered into its most intense and dangerous phase, and the outcome of life and death would be revealed very soon. There was no need for words to describe how shocked they were. At the very least, in the past, in the realm of ancient desolation, no one in the upper 9 realms could compare to such a peerless battle. To put it simply, this battle was unprecedented. Yun Qingbei, everyone says that your swordsmanship is the best in the world. I wonder if you dare to take a strike from me? Lin Sun suddenly opened his mouth. Everyone was stunned and almost couldn't believe their ears. When had Fiend God Lin ever immersed himself in the sword Tao? Even Yun Qingbei was slightly stunned at this moment, and then his expression became even more indifferent. He felt that such provocation was laughable. Rise! Lin Sun suddenly took a deep breath, and his face was as calm as an ancient well. His fingers turned into the shape of a sword and slowly swept out. Buzz! A stream of sword qi appeared in the void inch by inch. Every inch that appeared made the void wail suddenly, as if it could not bear it. As for the people outside the field, they only felt that with Lin Sun's movement, their hearts seemed to be gripped by an invisible hand. Their blood and qi were rolling, and they almost coughed up blood. Bang! 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 As this wisp of sword qi was revealed little by little, the whole world fell into a state of collapse, destruction, and oblivion. The invisible power made the earth sink with a loud bang. Yun Qingbei's pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression became extremely dignified in an instant. The previous disdain in his heart had long disappeared. In terms of attainments in sword Tao, Yun Qingbei was confident that he was invincible in the entire upper 9 realms. Because he had been pursuing the ultimate perfection of sword Tao all his life. Because he knew sword Tao, he knew better than others how terrifying the power contained in Lin Sun's sword was. But Yun Qingbei still couldn't believe it. How could Lin Sun master such an incredible power of sword Tao? Sword Tao was Yun Qingbei's proudest and most conceited way. But at this time, when he saw the qi of Lin Sun's sword, it was like a heavy blow to his heart. Condense! Yun Qingbei shouted. He couldn't calm down or tolerate it, as if his dignity had suffered the greatest provocation. It made him so angry for the first time. Inside his body, a terrifying sword qi was blooming, making his whole body shine brightly. Uncontrollable sword qi was overflowing from his beard, hair, and skin. Lin Sun, you are the first person who can force me to use this sword for 60 years. You can die without regret. You are the first person who can force me to use this sword. After that, Yun Qingbei's snow-white hair danced wildly, and his body cracked. Under the horrified gaze of the crowd, a stream of sword qi rushed out of his body. This sword qi was the culmination of Yun Qingbei's lifelong learning, which he had cultivated for 60 years. All kinds of great ways, countless mysteries, and lifelong efforts were gathered in it. This sword was a microcosm of his ultimate path of swordsmanship. This is, outside the arena, the spectators were all shocked and lost their voices in horror. Even people like Prince Xiaohao were silent, with stormy waves in their hearts. Lin Sun's sword had not been used, but it had already made the world pale. Yun Qingbai's sword, like a dazzling trace of sword Tao, was reflected in the world. It was so dazzling, brilliant, gorgeous, and horrible that it didn't seem to belong to the human world. Sword arrival. In the distance, under Lin Sun's fingertips, inch by inch, the sword chi finally took shape. It was incomparably sharp and unrestrained. Its power was unparalleled, and ghosts and gods were scared away. This sword filled the universe and cut through the longitude and latitude. It seemed to contain endless mysteries in it, and it also showed the essence of the simplest great way. No matter who it was, they all felt that they were as small as ants and unstoppable. This sword was called No Return. Cut. A word was uttered by Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai at the same time. Above the sky, two sword chi swept out from different directions and went to each other. All the people present felt a stabbing pain in their eyes, and all their senses seemed to be cut off. They were terrified and trembling uneasily. Prince Xiaohao and other peerless overlords couldn't open their eyes, so they could no longer see the details of this attack with their divine awareness. Even if they had tried their best, they couldn't. This could only mean that in this battle, both Lin Sun's sword and Yun Qingbai's sword were powerful enough to pose a serious threat to any of them. Therefore, their power was not something they could fathom. Boom! There was only a deafening explosion, like a war drum from the ninth heaven, vibrating in the ears and beating in the heart, making all living beings afraid. This kind of fear of not being able to see and being shocked physically and mentally was just a matter of a blink of an eye in the past. But at this time it seemed so long. No one knew how long it had been. Maybe it was just a moment, but for everyone, it seemed to have gone through a reincarnation of life and death, destruction and life. When their senses recovered and their vision gradually became clear, they saw that the area around the demon-slaying platform had changed beyond recognition, as if the sky had changed. The sky there was in a state of shattering, and it was densely covered in rifts and ravines, causing it to seem like numerous scars in the sky. The billowing sword chi had not dissipated yet. It flashed in the void, and the aura it emitted was still extremely terrifying. In the sky full of sword light, Yun Qingbai's body was bleeding, and the blood dyed his white hair like frost, exuding a kind of tragic aura. On the opposite side, Lin Sun was not much better. His body was also stained with blood, and his face was extremely pale. There was no doubt that both of them were seriously injured. This result was confusing and shocking. No one had expected that Lin Sun, who showed the power of Sword Tao for the first time in the battle, could block the sword that Yun Qinbai had cultivated for 60 years. This scene alone was enough to make the world look at him. After all, Yun Qinbai was known as the #1 sword practitioner among his peers in the world. At this moment, his sword with all his strength was blocked. This result itself was like a miracle. The most incredible thing was that it was also a sword that blocked this sword. This was destined to be a heavy blow to Yun Qinbai, who had risen with the power of Sword Tao. "I'm not as good as them," some peerless overlords sighed in their hearts. They had to admit that they were sincerely convinced. Demon God Lin actually blocked Yun Qinbai in Sword Tao. It's incredible, the heroes were in a trance. The only regret was that they could not witness the scene of the confrontation between the two swords from the beginning to the end. "If it were me, how would I block it?" Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and the others were all thinking silently. Their minds became unprecedentedly excited, and they could not calm down. Puff! Suddenly, high in the void, Yun Qinbai coughed violently, with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. There was an indescribable gloomy luster in his eyes. This made the hearts of all the experts tremble, and their expressions suddenly changed. They guessed a possibility. Could it be, Yun Qinbai, what else do you have to fight with me now? In the distance, Lin Sun said coldly, looking at Yun Qinbai with indifference. Lin Sun had given his opponent the heaviest blow in the place he was most proud of. Yun Qinbai had probably never experienced this kind of feeling in the past 60 years, had he? You're all so seriously injured. In the distance, Yun Qingbai took a deep breath and said slowly. His back was straight and did not bend at all, just like his pride. Even if he was defeated, he would rather die than yield. Aren't you the same? Lin Sun said calmly. It was impossible for him not to be injured at this moment. Just as Yun Qingbai said, he was seriously injured. But at the same time, Yun Qingbai was already an arrow at the end of its flight. It wouldn't take long to kill him. P.S. This is the second chapter. There's no more for tonight. Tomorrow, Goldfish will finish the plot of this battle in one go. I also hope that my brothers and sisters can subscribe to and support Goldfish. For a period of time in the future, I will mainly ask for subscriptions because subscriptions are really too important. The subscription money is just the money for a pack of cigarettes for everyone, but for Goldfish, it is a guarantee to support its family. Moreover, in the future, if there is no significant improvement in the number of subscriptions, it may be difficult to continue writing this book. If the number of subscriptions increases greatly, Goldfish will work hard to publish more chapters and write more wonderful stories for everyone. Friends who want to read the pirated version, if you have the ability, please try to come online and support Goldfish. Thank you very much. Chapter 1334. The world returned to silence. The oppressive and tense atmosphere made people almost breathless. Everyone could see that the battle was about to come to an end. And at this last moment, there was bound to be a great horror between life and death. Buzz. In the sky, Yun Qingbai waved his hand, and the heavenly sword, which was fiercely fighting with Duan Ren, suddenly returned and fell into his hand. Fight to the death? I haven't experienced this feeling for a long time. A soft murmur came from Yun Qingbai's mouth. His eyes became extremely firm, and his blood-stained body became unprecedentedly straight. His whole person, like a sword, exuded a kind of pious, calm, and unafraid of death. In the field, all the heroes were chilled and their scalps were about to explode. At this moment, Yun Qingbai seemed to be ready to die and burn himself. For Fiend God Lin to be able to force a legendary figure of the sword Dao to the point where he had no choice but to fight with his life on the line, how could anyone remain calm? The world was dark and the void was wailing. An invisible and terrifying aura slowly spread out as Yun Qingbai grasped the heavenly sword. There was no doubt that the next moment would be the strongest blow before the end of the life-and-death duel. The hearts of Old Toad, the big black bird, and Alu suddenly hung in the air at this moment. Their bodies were stiff, and they became unprecedentedly nervous and depressed. In the distance, Lin Sun still looked calm, but in his body, all the power was running to the extreme at this moment, without any reservation. There is great horror between life and death. I'm different from you. I've experienced it many times over the years. Although I can't say that I'm indifferent to life and death, at least I'm more experienced than you. Lin Sun said in a casual voice, his face unchanged. Even if Yun Qingbai risked his life to fight, so what? He knew this kind of life-risking experience better than Yun Qingbai, because since he was born, he had struggled between life and death until he escaped from the mine prison. He knew that it was not easy to survive. In those years in the mortal world, he rose from insignificance with a humble identity. His life was full of wind and rain, full of blood. Life and death, blood and fire, accompanied each other all the time. On the other hand, Yun Qingbai had entered the Heavenly Sword sect since he was young. Along the way, he had the guidance of a master, the protection of an expert, and endless cultivation resources for him to enjoy. Although his path of cultivation was decisive, courageous, and he had almost never tasted defeat, but how could he have experienced the feeling of rising in the midst of life and death? At this moment, he wanted to fight with his life on the line. But for Lin Sun, this posture was really ridiculous. Yun Qingbai was slightly stunned. Then, his expression became even more resolute. He said, "You're wrong. My heart is only the sword. My life and death are destined to be different from yours. As soon as he finished speaking, he was engulfed by the boundless sword radiance. Torrential sword chi soared into the sky, and the heavens and earth turned into a storm of sword intent. The clear and muddy heavens and the earth and the surroundings were instantly thrown into chaos and shattered into pieces. Rumble! At that moment, everyone watched in horror as Yun Qingbai's body, divine soul, and chi and blood seemed to be completely ignited as they were thrown into the sky-reaching sword. Offering his body to the sword. Is he going to risk his life? The onlookers were all dumbfounded. When a peerless figure risked his life to fight, that kind of indescribable impact was shocking to everyone. No wonder he's the #1 sword cultivator of his generation, the rare sword art genius in the ancient Desolation realm in 10,000 years. How many people in the history of the ancient Desolation realm can compare with him? Prince Xiaohao let out a long sigh. This sword is like a sacrifice. He will burn all his swordsmanship in an instant. Who can stop it? Ruowu Fairy was in a trance. I don't know whether Lin Sun can take this sword. As for Old Toad and the others, they were so nervous that their hearts seemed to jump out. Even if they were extremely confident in Lin Sun, they couldn't help but be nervous. Because at this moment, Yun Qi-bai had completely given up his life. Boom! Where Yun Qi-bai stood, the momentum of the sky-reaching sword rose to the sky. Endless sword radiance, sword chi, and sword intent surged and rotated. It turned into a huge whirlpool. A strand of an indescribable devouring aura of the sword Dao instantly effused out. As the vortex revolved, the sky there was torn apart into pieces, and space rumbled amidst the rumbling of explosions as it suddenly transformed into a boundless chaotic torrent of fragments. Rumble within thousands of miles, the grass, trees, rocks, and ground all burst into pieces, turning into smoke and dust flying wildly in the sky. Oh no! Some overmatches seemed to lose control of their bodies and flew toward the huge whirlpool of swordsmanship between heaven and earth. Devouring! That was an unparalleled devouring power. It melted into the whirlpool of swordsmanship and appeared between heaven and earth, as if it was going to devour everything in the world and all living beings. Even if they were far away, it still made people feel terrified and desperate. He has already invested all of his cultivation into this sword. To be able to see this scene in this life, I have no regrets. Some peerless overlords also tried their best to resist, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. They were extremely excited. Lin Sun, you fought me with swordsmanship. At this moment, I will give you a tooth for a tooth and kill you here. Yun Qingbai's firm and indifferent voice resounded between heaven and earth. His figure had long been hidden in the huge whirlpool of swordsmanship. Everything he had learned and his lifelong efforts were completely burned at this moment and integrated into this sword. Just to kill Lin Sun and kill Wuji. Your swordsmanship is based on my talent, and what you have been pursuing all my life doesn't belong to you at all. Suddenly Lin Sun sneered. His long hair fluttered as he stepped forward. The whirlpool of swordsmanship that made all the people present pale seemed to be ignored by Lin Sun. He took the initiative to rush forward. His figure was calm and resolute. Yun Qingbei sacrificed himself to the sword. Why would Lin Sun be afraid of death? It's good to die together, Yun Qingbai's ethereal voice came out. Lin Sun could even see Yun Qingbai's pious and calm expression, as if he was on a pilgrimage in the depths of the whirlpool of swordsmanship. Boom! The terrifying and boundless tearing force became stronger as it approached. It tore and collapsed the void, turning it into endless turbulence. Lin Sun's figure was submerged in an instant. When looked at from afar, he was like a moth that had pounced into a vortex that was connected to the heavens and the earth. He was so tiny yet so fearless. Die together? No, I'll kill you now. This was the last voice Lin Sun made before he was swallowed by the whirlpool. He was still calm, indifferent, and emotionless. Rumble! the huge whirlpool of swordsmanship rotated, and endless sword light surged in it, like the gate to hell, which was enough to make all living beings cold. It was terrible. When they saw Lin Sun's figure being swallowed up, many people in the field exclaimed, trembling with horror and despair. Are these two really going to perish together? No matter who dies in such a peerless battle, it will be a great loss for the whole world. If both of them die, it will be a pity. In the field, the expressions of the crowd changed constantly. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't see the situation in the whirlpool of swordsmanship. It was too terrifying, and it blocked everything. Imperial Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and the others were completely shocked, and their expressions were uncertain. This battle had gone on until now, and it was a huge blow to their hearts. Lin Sun, who took the initiative to rush over, and Yun Qinbai, who sacrificed himself to sacrifice his sword. Who would survive in the end? Or would they die together? No one knew. But everyone kept their eyes wide open and watched nervously. They urgently wanted to get an answer and put an end to this rare and unparalleled battle. However, no one knew that Lin Sun, who was swept into the whirlpool of swordsmanship, seemed to be in an extremely dangerous situation, but he wasn't injured. It was even to the extent that his hair wasn't damaged. The spiritual vein in front of his chest was boiling hot and glowing, and it flowed with a strange fluctuation of energy. Even if he was in the terrifying storm of swordsmanship, he felt as if he was walking on flat ground. However, his expression became emotional and complicated, and he wasn't as calm as before. Because at this moment, Lin Sun felt a familiar aura that he'd never seen before, but it made him feel like he was connected by blood. He knew that this was his innate aura. In the depths of the whirlpool, Yun Qinbai, who had been calm and firm, suddenly froze when he saw Lin Sun walking over leisurely. He couldn't believe it. This was the sword he'd given everything he had. He sacrificed himself to sacrifice his sword, and he didn't care about life or death. But the most ridiculous thing was that this attack, which he regarded as his strongest, was not as good as before, and it didn't even play any role. This strong contrast was like being hit in the back with a stick, which made Yun Qingbai's face change completely, and a strong sense of frustration rose in his heart. He could be fearless of life and death, because there was only swordsmanship in his heart. Even if he died, he could be proud of his life and never be defeated. However, he couldn't accept the scene in front of him. Why? His pupils dilated, and his body trembled with an unspeakable anger. What isn't yours doesn't belong to you after all. Lin Sun stopped and looked at Yun Qinbai in the distance. Looking at this formidable enemy who had shrouded his youth like a shadow, the complex emotions on his face had been replaced by a touch of calmness. I'm in charge of swordsmanship. Everything in the world, including the power of the past and the present, can be used by me as long as it helps me. You don't understand. Yun Qinbai said word by word, extremely firm. Lin Sun didn't refute but just said, I really don't understand your Tao, but I understand that your defeat today is due to the talent you took from me. Defeat? Yun Qingbai's face twisted and became crazy in an instant. As proud and conceited as he was, he had never been defeated since he started his cultivation. Go to hell! He roared, and his body seemed to be burning. The sky-reaching sword rotated, and in the huge whirlpool of swordsmanship, the sword chi was dense and humming like a tide, rushing to Lin Sun. Lin Sun stood still, but he seemed invincible. No matter how the sword chi attacked him like a torrent, it couldn't hurt him at all. This was because Yun Qingbai's strongest attack, if one were to disregard its appearance, was ultimately built on his own innate talent and power. How could Lin Sun be afraid? P.S. Thank you for your tips and monthly vote. There are 2 more chapters in the evening. Considering the continuity of the plot, Goldfish will update it after writing these 2 chapters. I only hope that my efforts will make more friends support the original version. Talents are the painstaking efforts of Goldfish. Naturally, I hope that the subscriptions will get better and better, so that I won't stop writing because of poor subscriptions. Everyone, let's work hard together. Chapter 1335. Yun Qingbai was too proud. He couldn't tolerate being defeated by Lin Sun with his own sword. Therefore, at the last moment, he wanted to kill Lin Sun by sacrificing himself to the sword by robbing Lin Sun's talent power. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Yun Qingbai probably didn't expect that when his body refinement cultivation broke through to the king realm, even his origin spirit meridian also transformed and gave birth to a true innate ability. The devouring abyss. This was the name of the spiritual veins, but it was also the name of a strange power derived from this talent. Yun Qingbai's mistake was that he thought he could seize his talent and seek the ultimate way of swordsmanship, but he was doomed to be unable to awaken his talent. Because the devouring abyss didn't belong to him after all. The sword vortex in front of him had a powerful devouring power, but in Lin Sun's eyes, it was like a child's play in front of an expert. Rumble, the sword chi was rushing over like a tide. Its power was enough to easily kill some peerless overlords in the world. But it couldn't touch Lin Sun at all. This scene made Yun Qingbai's face more and more livid. His originally firm Taoist heart was shaken at this moment. He didn't believe it. He was unwilling. It's impossible. Yun Qingbai's hair was disheveled as if he had gone crazy. When he had cultivated for 60 years and gathered his entire life's worth of effort into this sword strike, it could not even hurt a single hair on his opponent's body. To Yun Qingbai, this was an extremely heavy blow. It's called getting caught in a cocoon. Your power doesn't belong to you after all, but you always believe in it. Lin Sun looked more and more calm. Impossible! Yun Qingbai roared. At this moment, he no longer had the demeanor of a peerless swordsman. He seemed emotional and unstable. Impossible? Then I'll let you see what the real devouring abyss is. Suddenly, Lin Sun's body glowed. Suddenly, a big abyss emerged. It was boundless and immeasurably deep, and there was a strange phenomenon of the sky collapsing in it. Endless stars were annihilated in it. In an instant, the sword vortex seemed to stagnate and tumble violently. It seemed to be on the verge of collapse, buzzing and wailing. Look, this power that you stole can only bow its head before me. Do you think it still belongs to you? Lin Sun's black hair fluttered in the wind. His words were plain, but every word was like a heavy hammer, knocking on Yun Qingbai's Taoist heart. His expression changed dramatically. He was angry and unwilling. Blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He stared at Lin Sun and found it hard to accept. One's lifetime of cultivation actually didn't belong to one in the end. It was like everything one sought in one's lifetime was just an illusion, and it was sufficient to cause any cultivator to collapse. Puff! In the end, Yun Qingbai coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his expression turned gloomy. In the previous battle, he had already been seriously injured, and now, he had gathered all of his life's work into this one sword, exhausting all of it. At this moment, suffering such a blow caused his entire body to show signs of collapsing. To Lin Sun's surprise, Yun Qingbai's expression became calm again in just a moment. Perhaps this is retribution. He took a deep breath. His back was still as straight as a sword, just like his pride. No, this is not retribution. I never believe in retribution, Lin Sun said flatly. If there is retribution, you should have been killed by retribution after you killed all the lineal relatives of my Lin family. But in the end you are still alive, and your life is more dazzling than anyone else's. From then on, I knew that there was no retribution in this world, so I only believe in myself. Yun Qingbai was stunned. After a while, he said, perhaps what you said is right. There is no retribution at all. No one knew what he thought of, but his expression was gloomy, revealing a kind of chilling hatred. Yes, there is no retribution, after a long time, Yun Qingbai murmured. He raised his hand and suddenly inserted it into his chest. With a swish, His skin and flesh were torn, and blood burst out like a spring. When he pulled out his palm, there was already a section of spirit vein that was glistening and shining, and it was soaked in the scarlet blood. "Do you think I covet your talent?" Yun Qinbai lowered his head and stared at his palm. His chest was cut by himself, but he seemed to be unaware of it. Only his eyes showed the luster of incomparable pain. Tick, tick. Drops of blood slipped from his chest and fingers. The scene was so bloody and horrifying that Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. "Unfortunately, you are not me after all. You naturally don't understand that I, Yun Qinbai, have never thought of embarking on the road of cultivation at the beginning." When Yun Qinbai said this, his voice suddenly became excited and crazy, as if he was venting the suppressed emotions in the deepest part of his heart. Lin Sun looked indifferent. He would never sympathize with his enemy. Plop! Yun Qinbai seemed to be exhausted. In the end, he couldn't help sitting in the void, but his back was still straight. He raised his head and ignored the bloody wound on his chest. Looking at Lin Sun, his expression became extremely complicated. He seemed to be relieved and self-deprecating. "I haven't lost my composure like this for a long time, but I didn't expect it would happen in front of you." "Do you regret it?" Lin Sun asked. Yun Qinbai shook his head. "I have never regretted anything in my life, even now." Speaking of this, he suddenly said in a serious tone, "In fact, we are all the same kind of people. It's just that you have a choice, but I have no choice." At the end of his words, he looked lost. He sat there in a daze, as if recalling his past experiences. "Here you are." After a long time, Yun Qinbai raised his head with difficulty and opened his palm, revealing the shining white spiritual vein. Lin Sun grabbed it and took it in his hand. Without looking at it, he crushed it with his palm and fingers, turning it into a rain of light. Yun Qinbai was stunned. "Didn't you kill me to get this thing back? In your eyes, this thing is like your grand Tao, and it's indescribably important. But to me, even if it's gone, it won't harm my path towards the Tao." Lin Sun said calmly, "Since I decided to take revenge, I have only one thought. You, Yun Qinbai, must die." Yun Qinbai laughed out, as if he was laughing at himself. "Thank you very much. You still have the patience to wait until now. Before I die, can you promise me a small request?" He looked up at Lin Sun. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, "Go ahead." Yun Qinbai seemed to be very pleased. Then, an indescribable look of disdain, pride appeared between his eyebrows. In a trance, he seemed to have recovered the demeanor of a peerless swordsman. He said word by word, "I only wish to die under your strongest blow." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Okay," he agreed. Boom! A big abyss emerged and spread in the void. There were all kinds of Tao floating in it, and unparalleled fighting power gathered in it. Lin Sun's will was imprinted in it. Yun Qinbai raised his head and looked at this scene. His eyes were filled with infatuation and admiration, and he let out a soft sigh. "If I die on this path, I can die in peace." Boom! That big abyss could swallow the sky and sink the sea of stars. But at this moment, only Yun Qinbai was buried in it. Before he died, Yun Qinbai couldn't help but recall the scenes of that year. It was a cold winter with heavy snow. The 4-year-old village boy hobbled through the snow toward his home. It was so cold that the boy, who was only wearing a shabby cotton-padded jacket, had blue cheeks and chattering teeth. He quickened his pace, because he would be home soon. His mother must have already cooked porridge. His father should still be worried. After all, it would take a lot of money to send him to school. The boy knew that his family was very poor since he was a child. But no matter how poor they were, his parents never wronged him, which made him very sensible and obedient since he was a child. He never wanted his parents to worry about him. But when he arrived home, the boy was stunned. The courtyard was covered with a thick layer of snow, but there were 2 bleeding corpses lying quietly on the snow, a man and a woman. The man was a hunter in the village with a sallow face and weather-beaten eyebrows. The woman was a hard-working poor peasant woman with soft eyebrows. In the stove, a pot of porridge had been boiled, giving off a tempting aroma. But it couldn't hide the strong smell of blood in the courtyard. Heavy snow was falling from the sky. For the first time, the boy felt that this winter was so cold. He is indeed a natural-born sword bone, a rare sword cultivation prodigy. A gray-robed man appeared in front of the boy and hugged him. His broad hands caressed his body, his face full of smiles. "Come with me, I'll take you to cultivate." The gray-robed man carried the boy and strode forward. The boy's expression was wooden, and he did not say a word. Only his eyes stared at the courtyard that was gradually getting further away. In the courtyard, the snow was like silver, and the blood was like it was burning. His parents were lying there for eternity. At the age of 9, the boy had become the most famous sword cultivation prodigy in the heavenly sword sect. His cultivation progressed so quickly that some of the older people were ashamed. "Where's my sparrow? Where's my sparrow? Has anyone seen it?" On this day, the boy was like a madman looking for the sparrow. This was a sparrow that he raised, very ordinary, just like him when he was 4 years old. "It's just a feathered animal. Don't let external things affect your sword heart." The gray-robed man appeared again, his expression cold as he announced. And in his hand, he casually carried the corpse of a sparrow, shaking it in front of the boy. The boy was stunned for a moment. In his eyes, an unconcealable hatred flashed. At the age of 13, the boy had already grown into a youth, displaying a peerless sharpness that amazed the world. "Oriole, bring the sword. We're going to kill a demon." The youth planned to go out, and as usual, he instructed the maidservant. But this time, he did not hear the maidservant Oriole's voice for a long time. The youth frowned, somewhat displeased. But not long after, he fell silent. He saw a corpse placed upright in the courtyard. The youth did not say a word. He stared at it, thinking of when he was 9 years old, the little sparrow that was killed. He thought of the snow when he was 4 years old, and his parents lying in a pool of blood in the snow. After that day, the youth realized that in the heavenly sword sect, no matter who it was, as long as they met him, no one dared to come into contact with him. They avoided him as if he was the plague. P.S. Refreshed to see the 3rd chapter. Chapter 1336. The young man became more and more silent. He practiced swordsmanship every day like an ascetic monk. He spent all his time on cultivation. No one knew the pain, resentment, unwillingness, and struggle in his heart. Only cultivation could become his only spiritual support. A few years later, the gray-robed man appeared again and took him away from the heavenly sword sect to the Xiao Empire. "You are born with sword bone, but you are not strong enough. There is a baby born with a piece of Origin's spiritual vein. You go and take it." That day, the gray-robed man took the young man to the Lin clan and gave such an order. No! For the first time, the young man refused. He remembered the bloody experience of his family when he was 4 years old. It was like a nightmare that could not be erased, which had tortured him until now. He didn't want the same thing to happen to this strange family. Moreover, he was asked to be the murderer, which made the proud young man extremely resistant. Slap. What the young man got was a slap in the face and a cold and ruthless sentence. "If you don't go, I will deprive you of your sword bone and give it to the baby. He will regard him as my successor, and you will die." That night, the lineal clansmen of the Lin clan were slaughtered, and their blood dyed the heart-cleansing peak. Why did you do this? Didn't you just take the Origin's spiritual vein? Why did you kill them? The young man was furious. Childish. Only these 2 words answered him, ignoring the anger in the young man's heart. "I swear, one day I will kill you, definitely." That year, when the young man became the youngest expert in the reincarnation developing realm in the whole heavenly sword sect, he made such a vicious oath. And it was extremely firm, just like his sword heart. Also on that day, the gray-robed man came to him again and said a lot. A swordsman destroys your emotions and desires. He kills your parents, severs your bloodline. He kills the sparrow that you raise, severs the warmth in your heart. He kills your maid, severs your feelings. But, without me, you would not be where you are today. I am your guide, your teacher, and of course, the person you hate the most. If you can really kill me one day, it means that you have really understood the way of ruthlessness, and I will be gratified. You have to remember that the strongest sword Tao in the world can only be found in the word heartless. It's not as simple as it sounds. That day the young man fell into great pain. For 7 days and 7 nights, he suffered a kind of mental torture and torment. He decided to go into seclusion. This seclusion lasted for 10 years. 10 years later, the youth only had the sword Tao in his heart. Scenes of memories appeared in Yun Qingbai's mind like a fragmented painting. He was clearly about to die, yet he discovered that his past memories were unprecedentedly clear. From the very beginning I had no choice. Yun Qingbai sighed deeply in his heart. He was born with a sword bone and was known as the top sword cultivator among the young generation in the ancient Desolation region. How glorious was that! However, who knew that he had always been forced to do so? Do you regret it? There was no regret, only hatred. How he wished he could control fate and cut off all his enemies with his sword. What a pity! At that moment, Yun Qingbei closed his eyes. His body and essence soul transformed into a rain of light that dissipated. Lin Sun witnessed this scene with a calm expression. Only in his heart, there was a kind of incomparable relaxation, as if he had unloaded a boulder that had been carried on his back for many years. It was not pleasant, but it made him happy. Extremely happy. The great hatred was avenged today. Back then, when Lin Sun was still in the lower world and learned about the blood feud of the Lin family, he felt a kind of anger for the first time. In order to revenge, he had gone through life and death tribulations over the years in order to become stronger and kill the murderer who he had never met. He had been waiting for this day for too long. Now, this grievance could finally be settled. How could Lin Sun not feel happy in his heart? There are also some people who must be buried with you. Lin Sun remembered Meng Rong, the mother of Zhao Jingzhen, the 9th prince, and Meng Qiujing, an inner elder of the heaven-reaching sword sect, who leaked the secret to Yun Qingbei. In the early years, Lin Sun had already inquired that if Meng Rong and Meng Qiujing hadn't leaked the news to Yun Qingbei, the latter would never have known that there would be a baby born with the spiritual vein in the lower world. Now that Yun Qingbei, the culprit, was dead, the matter was not over, and these accomplices must not be let go. Master, these are the memories left in his consciousness before his death. Unfortunately, they are too fragmented, so I can only collect a small part. Suddenly, Little Silver's voice sounded. It was not difficult for the spirit-eating insect to seize some of Yun Qingbai's memories before his death with its talent of controlling the soul. A magnificent halo was held out by Little Silver. Look, this Yun Qingbei. Little Silver hesitated for a moment, but still said, in fact, he is a very poor guy. Lin Sun was stunned, and then he probed the halo with his divine awareness. Then, he saw fragments of Yun Qingbai's memories. On a snowy day when he was 4 years old, the boy looked at his parents lying in a pool of blood on the snow in a daze. Without saying a word, he was taken away. At that time, there was porridge cooked for him by his parents in the stove. It had been cooked, but his parents were gone, and their home was stained with blood. At the age of 9, an ordinary sparrow raised by the boy with warmth in his heart was mercilessly pinched to death. At the age of 13, scenes appeared in Lin Sun's mind. No wonder he said he had no choice. From the beginning, he never thought about practicing swordsmanship. After a long time, Lin Sun's face was bright and his heart was a little complicated. When he understood the truth behind the matter, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. This was a tragic and peerless figure. He remembered that Yun Qingbei had lost his composure before. He was almost crazy and showed incomparable hatred. He was also confused, and had a kind of unspeakable unwillingness. Now Lin Sun understood that what Yun Qi-bai hated was someone else. It was that person who changed Yun Qingbai's life and destroyed everything he had. "Master, do you regret it?" Little Silver asked. Lin Sun shook his head. "Even if I knew these things in advance, he and I would still be mortal enemies. The ending can't be changed." Little Silver said, "But I feel that the most abominable person is the man in the gray robe who took Yun Qingbei away. He is simply heartless and worse than an animal." There was anger in his voice. Yun Qingbei was a mountain village boy. Although his family was poor, he had a pair of kind and hard-working parents who regarded him as a treasure. But just because he had the sword bone, he caused a disaster that could not be dispelled. It was also because of this sword bone that his life was covered with a shadow that could not be dispelled. The most depressing thing was that the person who had killed his parents had become his teacher, passing on the Tao and teaching him. From the moment Yun Qingbei began to practice, he had been carrying great misfortune. He really had no choice. Therefore, Little Silver thought that the culprit of all this was the man in the gray robe. Lin Sun nodded, his eyes flashing, and said, "This man should be killed." It wasn't that he felt unfair for Yun Qingbei, but that he realized that there was another person behind the scenes who had caused the bloodshed of the Lin family. This person was the one who had changed Yun Qingbei's fate. Like a shadow, he accompanied Yun Qingbei on his path of cultivation. "Little Silver, have you noticed the identity of the man in the gray robe?" Lin Sun asked. "Yun Qingbei's memory is too fragmented, and he has a deep hatred for the man in the gray robe. In his memory, this man's appearance has always been very vague." Little Silver shook his head. Lin Sun also noticed this and said in a low voice, "Anyway, since this man can enter and leave the Heavenly Sword sect at will, he must have something to do with the sect." Little Silver agreed and said, "Master, do you remember what this man said? The most powerful swordsmanship in the world can only be found in the word ruthlessness. It can be seen that the swordsmanship this man has mastered is related to ruthlessness. Just remember this, and you will be able to recognize him if you meet him in the future." After hesitating for a moment, Lin Sun asked, "Little Silver, can you find any other clues about Yun Qingbei's memory of entering the mortal world and killing the Lin family? Although his talent was taken away when he was still a baby, he didn't die. Instead, he was rescued by Master Lu Boya. Moreover, he didn't know that Yun Qingbei didn't act alone, which made Lin Sun suspect that there were still many secrets hidden in the killing. After all, with the power of Xiao Empire and the presence of such bigwigs as the Emperor and the Empress, how could they watch such a bloody thing happen? There must be some truth in it that he couldn't know. No, his soul has collapsed, and I can't collect his memory at all." Little Silver shook his head. Lin Sun sighed in his heart, knowing that if he wanted to solve the mystery of that year, he had to return to the mortal world again. Boom! At this moment, the huge vortex transformed by the heavenly sword suddenly collapsed and turned into a rain of light, which was gorgeous like rain. "This is?" In the outside world, Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruowu, and others were shocked. Then Yi Mof, Wang Xuanyu, Mi Hengzhen, Qi Lingxiao, and others also froze and gasped. In the end, even Old Toad and others were dumbfounded. Has the winner been decided? Other strong people further away opened their eyes wide, trying to see this scene clearly. After the whirlpool of the Sword Way was destroyed, a strange sight appeared in the sky. A tall and handsome figure with clothes that were tainted with blood stood towering amidst the rain of dazzling sword lights that covered the sky, and he seemed illusory and eternal. Even when the rain of light was extinguished and the world returned to silence, Yun Qingbei was still nowhere to be seen. Only the dull and ancient heavenly sword, which originally belonged to Yun Qingbei, lay in the hand of the tall and handsome figure. The whole world was silent. This day was not far from the end of the domain of Absolute Summit. On the top of the demon-slaying platform, Demon Lin defeated the peerless legendary swordsman Yun Qinbai and seized his sword. This unprecedented duel, which was enough to attract the attention of the world and could be said to be rare in both ancient and modern times, ended with the victory of Demon Lin. The whole audience was silent. P.S. This battle is over. Regarding Yun Qinbai, I'm not trying to clear his name. I just want to make him three-dimensional and richer. In addition, continue to ask for subscriptions. As long as everyone works hard, Goldfish won't be afraid and will continue to update tomorrow.